$2,000?
All right, I'll call it $2,000. I'll gamble. Don't splash the pot.
You're on a draw, Mike? Go away. This one is not good for you. And in my club, I will splash the pot whenever the fuck I please.
Okay.
Sadistic Penguin Studios presents Yumper and Svo at the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
And Justin Svo Svoboda.
What, so I gotta sit here and eat dessert alone like I'm fucking Steven Glansberg?
It's almost time, so grab a drink. Get your popcorn ready and get comfortable to hear two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of season 3. I know we've been away for so long. That's mostly my fault because I'm a sick bastard. But we are finally here to shell out this episode, and I'm very excited to be here. My name is Yumper, a.k.a. Tom Garcia, and I'm with my co-host, Justin Svo Svoboda. How you doing, Mr. Svoboda?
Yumper, I am fantastic. I'm excited to do this episode tonight. I missed your face. It's good to be back on screen.
It's good to feel better to be able to podcast.
It's good. It's good that you're better, man. We missed having you around. Absolutely.
Yes, my friend. I know we haven't seen each other, but we've been texting a lot. But man, it just feels good to actually get some content out there that I can actually talk instead of coughing every 5 minutes. So, but we got an action-packed show today, Mr. Svoboda. We're going to be dealing with two very special guests, the OGs from the 108, and we're going to actually talk to them about their favorite subject involving gambling movies or gambling concept movies. How you feel about that one?
I love it, man. A lot of these movies are in my list of my favorite movies, not just gambling movies, but some of my favorite movies. So I'm excited to talk about them, and they always bring the heat when it comes to content. So I'm excited.
For sure, my man. But
we have the brains and the muscle of the 108. We don't have the sexiness because MSS isn't on here, but we have the brains and the muscle. So
he's probably selling something on eBay right now. But let's get into what we watched. You want to start us off, Mr. Svoboda?
Yeah. So I watched this movie with Ray Romano and Laurie Metcalf called Somewhere in Queens. Ray Romano directed it. It's just about a family in Queens, and their son is quiet. He doesn't talk a lot, but he's a great basketball player. And the things that the dad does is a really good dramedy. And Ray Romano's good. I like Ray Romano in movies. He's a big basketball sports guy in the movie and in real life. It's a pretty good flick. I liked it. And the other thing I watched is other night, Friday night when I got home from work, and Friday night was the first night of the new iPhone 15, and I had just worked 14 hours, and I wanted to put my phone up on the charger and watch a movie with my wife. We rented this movie called Bottoms. Now, Elizabeth Banks produced it, and she did Pitch Perfect, and she produced Cocaine Bear. And when I tell you, Yump, this was the weirdest fucking movie I've ever seen. I am not kidding. It is about two lesbian girls in high school in the early 90s that start a fight club to get laid. It is the strangest fucking movie, and it was weird. The girl that is in, she's the sous chef in The Bear. She's the main character in it, and it is the strangest, most bizarre movie I've ever seen. It's still in theaters, but it was available to rent on iTunes, and it is just an odd trip, man. Because it's exactly what I said. They start a fight club in high school to get laid.
That sounds like a very fucking weird story.
It's so weird.
It's kind of like Hot Rod. You ever see Hot Rod? Like the whole point of him.
I think that's a great comparison. Like he wants to become the stuntman to get the girl or whatever.
Well, he wants to make enough money to pay for his dad's operation so he can kick his ass at the end.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. It's
so random.
It's got a really high Rotten Tomatoes rating, but it is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen.
Sometimes those are the good movies to watch. I mean, me and Jen watched a movie called Harold with Cuba Gooding Jr. and this kid that looks like he was 45. It was probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But we were dating at the time, and she picked it on Netflix, so I was like, okay. But and then when we got married, I told her how bad it was. But
did you also watch the movie Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
Yes, man goes by the name Radio. I felt, you know what? I felt so bad watching that movie because I think he kind of overplayed radio there.
Oh, he did. Like, and that's the whole point of Tropic Thunder, where Tony Stark or I'm sorry, Robert Downey Jr. go, you never go full R word.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not gonna say it, but you never go full R word.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But I watched, so having COVID and being sick, I actually got to knock out 2 HBO series. The first one being Carnival, which is actually created by David Knopf, who wrote The Blacklist. He's a creator of The Blacklist. The show stars Clancy Brown, who I think is like such an underrated character actor. Michael J. Anderson's also in it. He's from Twin Peaks, if you guys remember him. He's a short dwarf actor. And Nick Stahl, who's from Terminator 3. It was canceled after 2 seasons and left on a cliffhanger, but it's actually, to me, it was a very interesting show. I really liked the dialogue. It was basically good versus evil, and it's set in a 1930s Depression era carnival setting where they go from town to town. And there's like a good in Nick Stahl and an evil in Clancy Brown, and he plays a preacher.
Nick Stahl is also in one of my favorite comic book movies, Sin City.
Yes, he is. That's another great.
And he plays the yellow. What they just call him, the yellow bastard, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's fantastic in that movie. You watched a lot of HBO shows, huh?
Yes, I've heard of Carnival. I remember seeing the commercials for it back in the day. Just never got around to it. I was a big proponent of Oz. I loved Oz. I actually own all of them on DVD, believe it or not. I was a big fan of them. That series, even though I got kind of bad towards the end. Of course, I love The Sopranos. Carnival was always something I want to check out, and since I had nothing better to do but stay in my room, I watched that. And the other show I checked out was Deadwood. I'm a sucker for westerns. You know, I like Unforgiven is my favorite movie of all time. Deadwood is actually based off real characters that actually were in Deadwood, North Dakota, I believe. South Dakota, Deadwood, South Dakota. Ian McShane is a fucking like ruthless asshole, but he shows so much, range with his character. Dude won a Golden Globe for his performance. Timothy Olyphant's in it as the main character, and you have Brad Dourif in it, who gives great monologues as a doctor. It shows a lot of stuff from the Old West and how this town got started up because it was actually on indigenous territory, so there was no rules, no law, and it was a gold mining town. And it takes a lot of stuff that really happened in real life, like while Bill Hickok was there, Calamity Jane was there, and it shows some of the factual stuff while putting in dramatization around it. And I really enjoyed it. It's another show that got canceled after 3 seasons, but they actually did the right thing and brought it back for a movie to close it out within the past 2 years. Now, I haven't had a chance to watch the movie, which I'll get around to, but I love the fact that I actually have something to look forward to giving it some closure to the series.
Yeah, not like when they made the Entourage movie, right?
Yeah, dude, I remember reading about, like, when that movie came out, I remember reading about, like, on message boards how people hated Entourage.
Bro, so, like, we talked, that was our last episode, was the TV episode. And Entourage is a top 5 favorite TV show for me. It's one of the broiest things that I like, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. And that movie was just a giant fucking piece of garbage. Like, it was like fucking 2023 White Sox Chicago Bears garbage. It was brutal. Deadwood should have been in cocksucker.
That is a word that's repeated.
My old man loves Deadwood, and I've never given it a chance. I should look into it.
Yeah, so both series are actually slow burns. A lot of like stuff goes around it. Deadwood's a little more slower than Carnival, because Carnival has kind of like a supernatural element to it.
Yeah.
But Deadwood, like, just Ian McShane just draws you in because he plays like a ruthless asshole. And cocksucker is mentioned like in every like 4th line. That's like their whole like insult, cocksucker.
Okay.
But it's very enjoyable. I liked it a lot. Timmy Olyphant, I think, is a great actor as well.
Oh,
Only thing weird about him is his like facial expressions. Like,
did you see Justified? Did you watch any Justified?
Yes. So Justified was something else I watched before, and that's why I watched Deadwood, because I liked them in Justified.
Okay.
Yeah. So definitely, if you haven't checked those two out, check them out. Carnival, like I said, has got that weird element to it, and Deadwood's, one of those series that really doesn't get talked about enough. That should be mentioned more.
They're both HBO shows, so like I know you know this, but like when I'm at work, like I deal with so many people. Like on my lunch hour, I bring my iPad and I watch something, so I don't have to talk to anybody for an hour because I got to go back up to the sales floor and beyond. But I don't know if I can get away with an HBO show. on my lunch
Not
hour
these
because
two.
I don't need titties in the break room, right? Like I just don't need it.
Yeah, not these two. Like Ian McShane runs a whorehouse, so you're
Oh
not.
yeah, no, definitely not. I can't do
Carnival,
Entourage. I
yeah,
can't do
but-
Sopranos. Like I got to do like chill stuff.
Yeah,
So-
there you can't watch them too,
Okay,
but
yeah.
on your own you can watch them though.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what we that's what we watched. If you want to let us know what you watched, check us out at Yumper and Svo on Twitter and send us your picks there. If we're still on Twitter, if it doesn't fucking blow up or something. But until then, check us out at
Until
Yumper and
then,
Svo.
absolutely.
Yeah. So we have two very, very special guests. Well, and what better way to introduce these guests than their own little intros? So we have somebody by the name of Tony Soprano to introduce our first guest.
This man is your grandmother's thirst trap, standing at 6 foot plus, and weighing in at a delicious 200 plus pounds. Mr. Delicious himself, Beefloaf.
And his other guest who to go along with him is introduced by Emperor Palpatine.
He is one of the original drunk uncles who slaps the bass. He is most likely 6 bourbons in. The Mexican George Clooney. Chorizy.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Fantastic.
That was wonderful, man.
I love it.
Bless your heart for doing that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Gotta love AI, right?
Yeah, AI, man. I gotta do
Now
something.
I know we're
different.
supposed to talk gambling. We're supposed to talk gambling or something, but I want to hear more about this Bottoms movie. This sounds right.
Yes. So it's in theaters now, and like I said, it is literally Rachel Senna is in it. It's nobody that you know except for the girl from The Bear. Have you got either of you guys watched The Bear?
I watched the first season.
I'm about halfway through the first season. I'm enjoying it.
So she's the sous chef that like she makes the crazy potato chip omelet in season 2. If you know what I mean. It is the goofiest thing I've ever seen. So the tagline is, let me see if I have it for you real quick. Where are you? I got it. 2 unpopular queer high school students start a fight club to have sex before graduation. So like it's exactly what it is. And yeah.
Creativity abound. I love it.
It's like American Pie met a David Fincher movie.
It's got high ratings on IMDb. It's like a 7, so must be doing something right.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was just the strangest thing that I've ever seen. And
now, let me ask this though, Svo, because how do you get the inputs? Like, how do you know that exists? Like, this is what freaks me out sometimes about listening to you guys. Like, what have you been watching lately? And you have watched some bizarre shit. I'm like, how'd you find this? Like, how did you even know this was on the planet? Like, I'm not aware of many things that you guys talk about you're watching. How did you figure this out? Like,
I mean, it's just a matter of like I go to the movies 3 times a week, or like 2 or 3 times a week, and these trailers pop on, and I pay for this monthly subscription thing to AMC, where I can see like 12 movies a month for $24.
Oh,
so
nice.
like if I got nothing else to do, right? The wife and I don't have kids. If we got nothing else to do, like fuck it, we're gonna go to the movies. So I see all these trailers and I'm like, let's just go do it, right? And we didn't get a chance to go to the theater to see it, but I came home from work and I wanted nothing to do with anybody else but to hang out with my wife. So I put my phone upstairs and I bought it. It was like $12. I own it now, and I can't believe I own it. Right?
He can rewind to his favorite part, Chorizy. See, I knew we were getting somewhere with this. I knew we were going to go somewhere.
Now we understand.
For anybody listening to the audio, Beef was doing the scissor motion, and now I'm doing the scissor motion.
I was. I'm sorry. I apologize for changing up the show. I don't mean it. You guys usually do a good job. You're fucked now. You got Chorizy on here.
I love that you asked. And if either of you guys want to watch it, I'll give you my Movies Anywhere account, and you guys can check it out for yourself.
There we go.
Mercy.
We're all watching the same horny movie from the same account.
I'm pretty sure MSS will be hitting up the DMs later. So gentlemen, we brought you on. We had you on before into your own separate episodes. Beef, you were on us when we talked about some mob movies and organized crime movies, and we had Chorizy to talk about Star Wars. So, you know, I go to the games a lot with you guys at the Sox games, and you guys are always talking either gambling or some form of it, whether it be on your podcast or at the ballpark. And, you know,
they're degenerates. Let's just call it what it is. They're degenerates.
Well, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, just to give it a little, we'll back it up a little bit. So when we were kids, one of my grandfathers commented, and both of our grandfathers were kind of like this, commented, normally when your grandkids, you teach them how to pray or whatever, and they taught us how to play cards. So like when we were kids, we were learning card games, we were learning angles and all this stuff. Fast forward to when we're a little older, I've always kind of had interest in different gambling games. We figured out some ways, particularly with sports betting, where we were making money. We were making probably half our living doing sports betting. Probably this is like 2008 to 2015-ish, right? Somewhere in there, Chorizy, where we were doing really seriously gambling, arbitraging, and all that stuff. But outside of that, yes, we have degenerate tendencies as well, where we're just interested in the concepts of gambling and how it applies to everything else. So we have substantial experience doing it for profit, and then we also have like kind of screwing around with gambling stuff.
No, I love it. I love it. I bought myself up a tax bracket last year with college football bets. So it's just one of those things, right?
Nice
like
work.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Beef, you kind of answered one of my questions I was going to ask you about. Was it something in terms of gambling or even like sports betting? Was it something that really got you interested because of the numbers? And you're pulling away the charade here. You are an accountant, so did numbers always interest you in the importance of sports betting? Because I know you were talking about formulas and whatnot on your pod. So is that something that kind of like drew your eye?
Well, I guess analytical pursuits of any sort. So like games and stuff are interesting in general. I'm probably from a gambling standpoint, I was always more interested in poker than I was in sports betting. When we got into sports betting, when I started it out, I kind of met the right people who helped me learn a few things that I really needed to learn. And then once we started running it as a business, Chorizy and I just found the angles which we were the best at. There were guys who we knew, other groups that were handicappers and did those sorts of things. We were straight arbitragers. We didn't handicap a goddamn thing. So a lot of our stuff was relative value. The other thing was like we learned how to get a lot of bonus money. So like there's ways to angle and get yourself in there. So yeah, so to answer your question, Yump, yes, it's like an analytical pursuit, but like poker is way more fascinating to me. Like lately I've been playing a lot of 7-card stud high low online, and I've been making a little bit of profit. We're talking like, go out to dinner money, not real money, but like,
right.
But the way the game works and understanding how to play well and understanding where I make mistakes, like that's the type of shit I'm really interested in as far as like learning, grasping the concepts.
So, let me ask you this. You guys love Vegas. Where's your favorite casino to play in Vegas? And what's the first stop when you get off the plane in Vegas?
So I don't know that we have necessarily. So, okay, I guess I do have a favorite if it's me and Beef. If me and Beef are out there by ourselves, we're hitting the Plaza downtown.
Okay.
That was our that was our spot for a long time. It was like the first place to start giving us like free rooms and stuff. And we would go out and we would be there like Tuesday through Thursday and just nonstop. We didn't do anything. We didn't go to shows. We didn't go out to fancy dinners. We played at the tables until they gave us free food. And then we ate disgusting buffets in downtown Vegas back when it was still very shitty.
So you like Fremont Street.
And that was like
on Fremont Street, yeah.
That was really like, just me and Beef getting away from everything and hanging out together. And so like I always enjoyed that. Now I think when we take the wives and it's much more, let's hit all these awesome dinners and let's hit these really great cocktail bars and things like that. But I mean, I still if I'm gonna sit with Beef, we're probably playing 3-card poker. Because that's just a really fun game. If there's more guys with us, absolutely a craps table. Because nothing is as lively as a craps table. That's where you got to get to.
Nice. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was I watched your Super Bowl pick show on the 108, and my brother wanted me to mention this to you because it's still like we still talk about today whenever we talk about sports betting. Is one of the bets you guys mentioned was, will Andy Reid be smothered in barbecue sauce? so that still cracks me up because it's so randomly out there. Is there a bet you guys place a wager on that is so ridiculous? You're like, I can't believe I bet on that.
I mean, all of the Super Bowl props are insanity, right? And like, it's weird to get scenarios where you have an edge in the Super Bowl props. But so like we didn't get a chance to bet on this because things had kind of moved around and like offshore was kind of going away, and inside the United States they don't have some of these bets. So like there was a few years back, there was a bet where it was the national. There's always this bet on how long the national anthem song will be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the internet gambling not catching up with what the rest of the internet is, because the person's going to rehearse it the day before. Someone's going to get video of that and they're going to tweet it. And gamblers are going to see that and go, I know exactly how long this is going to take, and just hammer a line. And so they had to, all of these books just had to take the bet down as soon as they just started getting hammered for this. But it's bets like that where it's just it's just the silliest thing, but people are going to find an edge. There's an edge to be found in everywhere. And that's kind of that's the thing I like the most about it, is just seeing the world through a lens of, I got to find an edge to every single thing that's here.
Chorizy, that's some Sam Rothstein. He knew if the other quarterback's girlfriend was on coke shit right there.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
That's exactly what that is.
Absolutely. I mean, Chorizy, I was thinking about wild stuff. Remember when sportsbook.com, those skins back in the day, they had live betting during the NFL draft. And on Twitter, the draft picks were coming out a couple picks before. So you could literally bet, it was a small limit, it's $100. You could bet $100 and know with certainty, because Schefter and all these guys told you what the pick is going to be. It's going to be in 10 minutes.
Beef, I was saving that.
I was going to say, for a half hour, we were smashing no doubters. The other one I remember, winning money on something weird, we probably won mid-five figures on the 2012 election. That's Obama's second election, because that was when I think that was when Nate Silver kind of got big for a little bit, and he was posting all this stuff on 538, but he was also posting the odds for the individual states, and we had a couple sites offshore that were taking the states, and for whatever reason they weren't moving along with kind of what the rest of the world thought in these polls. So we're hitting $500 a poll kind of across all these things, and banging 80% on these things, because the books didn't pay enough attention, the offshore books, and then they allowed us to run free. So stuff like that was always a lot of fun, Chorizy. I always thought it was great.
That was always the craziest stuff. That's and the we'll get back to the NFL draft one, Beef, later, because it'll help explain what's going on in one of the movies. But yeah, that one was really great. I'm trying to think if there's any other really weird ones, but I think the weirdest other stuff was we would always bet, and this was always a glorious day, was on July 4th. I'd wake up at about 7 a.m. and I would get full accounts in on the hot dog contest.
Right.
Just every dollar that was in there, as much as I could, at the smallest bets that they would allow, and just hammer through, because they were always way off of what actually was going to happen. They're good now. They're very sharp now with those hot dog bets. But back in the day, especially if they had matchups, they had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting, how you say, back in the day, you had some inside information, whether it be Schefter or them. So I want to know you guys' opinion. If you guys, I know you guys are not big fans in wrestling, but wrestling is now, being bet on by DraftKings and other sports books. How do you think that's going to work out in the long run?
So this is actually, it's always been able to be bet on offshore. And there was a guy, oh man, his name was Blue Dolphin 47 or something on Reddit. And he claimed to work for WWE, and he would just post in the Reddit threads everyone who was going to win. And for a good 6 or 7 things in a row, it was easy money. This guy, I don't know how he knew. He must have had a friend or something. But then he just kind of disappeared. And so either he got fired or someone found out who he was and was you better stop doing this. We're going to break your legs. I don't know what happened. But for a while, there was a thread that was just here's everything that's going to happen. And
full disclosure, Chorizy, the books that we knew that were taking action, they might let you bet $25 or something. Yeah, it was not. They weren't letting you bet a lot. It was very low entertainment stakes, so they weren't going to get hurt by it. I don't know what it looks like now. I don't know if anyone's actually taking real action on that sort of thing. But you would think information could get leaked and things could get out.
Yeah, I mean that's a very that is a terrible thing to take bets on. If to answer your question, there is going to be someone who leaks something to someone. Someone's going to make a bunch of money off of this, and they're going to get pissed off about it. But I think what DraftKings might do is, to Beef's point, keep the limits so low that it's not worth to anybody to like lose their job over.
Yeah, I think what was coming out when I was reading about it was that they're going to tell the two wrestlers before they go out who's going to go over. I don't know how that will work because you still have people in the back that can still send shit out to people, but I think I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like if it was like a game of chance where it's actually, anything can happen in sports, but when it comes to like stuff like scripted, I'm like, I'm not. Oh, yeah, I won't talk about them. But if it's something scripted, like I don't know how I wouldn't trust throwing my money on it because something can just change it. That's just my opinion on it.
Right.
But gentlemen, thank you so much for answering those questions on gambling. I know we're gonna get into a little bit more when we go through these actual films. Are you guys ready to get started with the first one?
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's get into our first movie.
I'm acting for a group of investors looking for short-term security.
Well, you've come to the right place then.
I was thinking of bearer bonds.
Well, that's not a bad idea. Bonds are secure. Great way of moving money around fast. Okay, so would you like me to open up an account for you right now?
Yeah, 200,000 in the name of Roger Oskiner.
Okay. Hey. You see those Blue Jays on Monday night?
7 to 5?
Those guys are hot.
Owning Mahoney, released in 2003, directed by Richard Kwiatkowski, who also directed Love and Death on Long Island, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman, Minnie Driver, John Hurt, Maury Chaykin, and Ian Tracy. The movie had a budget of $10 million and only made $1 million at the box office. So like I was telling you guys earlier, when we were choosing what movies to pick, this is a movie that I always liked. I remember first watching it in 2005. One of my best friends in college, who's actually a professional poker player, that's how he made his money on the side, will always pick up these obscure movies. Like when Sideways come out, even though we didn't hear about it, he had it. This is one of the movies he's like, you got to watch this. And then I actually saw it. It's a movie based on a guy with a gambling addiction that embezzles money from a bank in Toronto. And it just shows you, it's kind of a depressing movie in terms of how Philip Seymour Hoffman plays it. And you kind of feel for the guy, but you also kind of get pissed, like, why are you betting? But you see how people go through addiction. And I couldn't see anybody else playing this role because Hoffman dealt with his own addiction on the side, in his personal life. And I think he plays the role perfectly. It's also based off a true story of Brian Maloney, who embezzled $10.2 million from a Canadian bank. And Chorizy, I know you wanted to talk about the real life guy. So let's hear what you have to say about it.
Well, the real life guy it's crazy because he did that in like a year. Like that was like $10 million that like from like 81 to 82. And I think about like early 80s, $10 million, that's like $30 million now. Imagine blowing through $30 million in like a year. But imagine being the casino, because he was always at Caesars for this. Like almost all the money was lost at Caesars. And it's like, imagine being that casino and being like, yeah, this guy works at there's like a mid-level dude at a bank. Of course, he could just wire in $1 million. Why would we flinch at that, right? And it's like, I remember watching this movie when it came out because it raised all these questions about the casino industry and like, how much of a part do they play in something like this? And they ended up getting sued, and then like the gaming commission made them. This is like, I've heard of this as a punishment for casinos before. This is the only one I know where it actually happened, and like I can reference it. But they made them close for a day, and so it was like the Saturday after Thanksgiving of one year, and like the estimate is that you would lose like $700,000 to $800,000 closing for that one day, and so like that's quite an interesting punishment, but also it's like nowhere near what they gained from this whole scenario.
Yeah, it's totally crazy how they lost $700,000, but in the movie, like John Hurt plays the role of the casino manager, and he plays it like a complete asshole. And you think, the more and more you think about the inside and outside of casino, there are people like that. They're trying to get your money, and he gets pissed when he goes to Vegas to play action down there. They wound up play in Atlantic City. And it just shows how they did a background check on him and they found out he's only making 22K of the year. And he's like, what we don't know won't hurt us, basically. He tells the guy, shut up. The less we know, the better we are off of making money. And it's just crazy how he goes with these stacks of chips and plays and he'll go on a heater where he's making 3 times of what he came in with. And then, even the person they had sit with him tells him, take it and go home. No, he's like, no, I'm a heater. And he just loses it all, like, completely. And you just kind of feel bad for him, but you can see how bad the addiction, is affecting him in terms of gambling. And shout out to Minnie Driver's character, because her ass stood behind him the whole way. And I was just like, I've been like, fuck this guy.
Yeah, there's like crazy scene to your point with the casino and the way John Hurt plays this. There's a scene in it where he is like on this heater, and like one of the guys from the casino comes up to him and is like mad about it. And he says something like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but
wait till 4 a.m.
Okay, yeah, wait till 4 a.m. And like, then they like fast forward to that time, and he is just like, everything's gone. Just like it's all like he's down to like his last like little stack of chips, and it's like, man, like,
yeah, you can't see the pain in his face too, where he's like rubbing his he's like sweating and shit. Like,
so our original plan for this movie was to have our boy Nam surprise us and do a cameo. Because this guy talks about this movie in such high regard. He loves this movie, and he couldn't make it tonight, but he wanted me to tell you that this is a top 3 gambling movie for him all time. Philip Seymour Hoffman is absolutely awesome in it, and he wishes that he personally could be the guy that gets to eat all the leftover ribs that got cold because Philip Seymour Hoffman was gambling and couldn't be bothered to go eat the free ribs. Those were words from Nam exactly.
Yeah, that part is hilarious. How the casino manager asked Phil Seymour Hoffman's character, "Hey, what would you like to eat?" And he's like, "Oh, I want some ribs, no sauce, and a Coke." And while he's gambling, he's telling the kitchen, "Make him a new plate. We don't want him to stop. We don't want him to stop." So it turns out that after he loses all his money, they had so much fucking ribs they gave him to the staff.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's how he meets a cook in the stairwell, because he's stressing out about losing money, and they eat ribs together, which I thought was hilarious. But Beef, I know you haven't seen this one. This is a movie that's kind of hard to find. It's a Canadian film, but there is a link on YouTube. Reach out to me, I can send it to you. You guys can check it out for free. But like, does this pique your interest at all in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love degenerate movies like this. I mean, in a way, it reminds me a little bit of the degenerate part of it reminds me of High Roller, which is the movie that's about Stu Unger that Michael Imperioli is the star of. And we didn't pick it on our lineup today. I thought about it, but I ended up not using it. Now, that's coming from the standpoint of a guy who was a professional gambler who had a lot of leaks or whatever. This is a person who's just like in a normal white collar job. But it's still the same thing where they just can't stop themselves. They keep going and going and going, whether it be drugs or gambling or whatever, and it just never stops. So yeah, these movies are always interesting in the psychology of human beings and their limits.
Yeah, and one aspect of the movie too, Beef, that about this guy personally was he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, and he didn't like partake in extramarital affairs. He just cared about gambling. That was, and even the casino owners were like, "What the fuck's going on with him?" That's all he cared about was gambling. And you were saying, so like, maybe he should have.
Maybe he should have, yeah.
Needed more vices.
Yeah.
Kind of balance them out.
Black tar heroin, gambling, like womanizing, maybe like, everything's good in moderation.
Definitely. So Swole, what do you think about this movie?
I like this movie. I had never seen it until Nam made me watch it, made me look for it. But I love anything that Philip Seymour Hoffman does. Like, Philip Seymour Hoffman was the best part of so many of my favorite movies, right? Boogie Nights, 25th Hour. And the dude can act, and he was absolutely fantastic. But just like Beef, I love movies that tell stories like this. Like, there are so many movies that I left off the list, but this was an absolutely elite, like, gambling movie.
Yeah, for sure. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's kind of depressing, but it's very interesting. Hoffman, like, he plays the role to perfection, in my opinion.
I think most of these movies are kind of depressing because you're always chasing that high, right? And it's never, like, once you get it, it's never quite the same. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
It could be, yeah. I mean, for For the most real life ones, they are pretty depressing because usually people walk away with nothing.
Yeah.
And this guy definitely walked away with shit at the end of his tirade. But let's get into our next movie.
Talk to me. Somebody's quiet, will you? Blanche, John, Grandma, talk to me. Will you? Stay quiet, will you? Come on, hey, kid. Stay quiet, will you? Be quiet, will you? Somebody, will you shut the fat little bastard up?
1983's Easy Money, directed by James Signorelli, who also directed Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. He did some Rolling Stones videos, most namely Mixed Emotions. And he also is a producer of SNL. This film stars Rodney Dangerfield, Joe Pesci, Kenny Azzara, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Geraldine Fitzgerald. It had a box office of $29.3 million and an unknown budget. So, Chorizy, this is one of your picks. Tell me why.
So this, to me, this is, well, it's definitely not a depressing film. This is one of, it's a very funny movie. It's one of my favorite. It's just generally one of my favorite movies. And the reason that I like this one so much, though, is like, so there is like tons of degenerate gambling, and they're showing like some of the things that happens that everybody knew about in gambling. Like they go to the harness races, and the guy's throwing the race, and he's basically skiing because he's got his feet down on the ground, like so that the horse will lose, and it's the horse that they all bet on, you know, or like they're going to play craps, and like he's won all this money, and then he like craps out and like loses everything, and like he's just like this kind of degenerate, but his wife's family is very wealthy. His mother-in-law is very wealthy, and she passes away. And in her will, she leaves $10 million to them, but on a set of conditions that have to be met over the course of a year. And so this is really a real life bet, right? Like for him, like this is just you have basically a $10 million bet that you can't, like you got to go a year. You can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't do drugs, you can't gamble. You can't like be at strip clubs and cheating on your wife and all this stuff.
He's got to get down to a certain weight. Like
he's got to hold a certain weight.
Yeah.
He's got to be in like good health. He can't eat like junk food and stuff. And so like, it's one of those things where it's like, as a kid, I watched it and I was like, of course you would just do this. Like you would just do this and you'd be fine. Like you'd get $10 million, $30 million nowadays, right? If you extrapolate it, but like, this is incredibly hard, like what they're asking this dude to go from and become. And like, I get that the money's huge, right? But like, think about yourself, right? Being put in a position like this where they're like, yeah, it's like $30 million on the line. You do this. But like, how many of your friends you'd be like, I just can't hang out with that guy. I just can't be around this dude. I can't go to this. I can't, I got to get rid of all the gambling sites that I'm on. I can't go play cards with my buddies. I can't go to the bar. Like all these things you just got to like cut out of your life. I know we'd all do it, right? We're like, cause it's $30 million, but it's at the same time, it seems really impossible now that I'm an adult. And like, I think that's one of my favorite things about it is that like, I watched this as a kid. I thought it was funny. And then I grew up as an adult and like, there's a lot more jokes that I get in the movie. And I kind of understand why Rodney is or Monty, I should say, in the movie is having such a hard time with this scenario.
Yeah. What about you, Beef? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Son-in-law. No, my bad. Monty's son-in-law is Taylor Negron from like Biodome.
Yes, he is.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High, then.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He's just, I love that dude. He is hilarious.
And he's great in this movie
famous,
too.
Extremely famous sample comes out of this movie. The I am so bad I should be in detention.
Yes. That's right. He's outside the window.
Yeah, I watched that. I rewatched it today, and it's kind of funny because we went from a really depressing degenerate to a more comical one in Rodney Dangerfield. And you know, this is his first lead role. Like he was in Caddyshack. This is like one of his first big roles. This is Joe Pesci's actually first comedy movie. Even though he's not as he's hilarious in certain points. I think everything's all Rodney. Like I love anything with Rodney, but I just love the fact when they're talking about the bet, Chorizy, and they show like his friends giving their 2 cents on it, and out of nowhere, fucking Phil Leotardo Frank Vincent goes, "You can do it." Yeah, just crack that part just cracks me up because he's just randomly placed in there. And as a mob guy, of course, but it's just funny that he happens to be in that little montage. The movie, I really enjoy it. It's a movie that doesn't get talked about a lot. Cisco gave it 3 out of 4 stars. It's something that people don't really talk about when they talk about Rodney movies. It's usually Back to School or Caddyshack.
Yeah.
But it's definitely up there. It's a hilarious movie. What about you, Beef?
Yeah, I mean, the one main gambling tenet for me in this, and Chorizy brought it up, is about environment. Sometimes it's tough to do the things you're supposed to do depending on the environment you're in. And he brings it up. Like, the whole bet is him ripping apart everything that he normally does. You cannot do any of it anymore. And so maintaining a social life or even being around any of those people is nearly impossible. And it's kind of you need a good night's sleep for the next day so that you can do well at work idea, but extrapolated across every hour of your life. You can no longer kind of be in those situations in order for you to complete the bet to win the bet. The second thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to get in trouble right out of the gate, but the cameo from Kimberly MacArthur and Chorizy, I don't know if you know who that is, but I'll just tell you.
Neighbor?
Not worth $5 million, not worth 5 million, 10 million maybe. So, just saying, yeah, that scene forever has shaped me. I want to ask you, Chorizy, best titties in a movie ever that you've ever seen. Is that up there? Top 5 at least.
Oh, it's gotta be up there. And it also it falls into the next scene when he's talking to his neighbor, which is my favorite line in the whole movie. When he's talking to his neighbor, he tells him, "I saw more than." When he's like, "Oh, you met my better half," he's like, "I saw more than half." But they're talking, and he's asking him about. He's like, "Hey, maybe you need a little tootsarootski, maybe a little smoke, And he goes, "Hey, man, you're talking to me about drugs. My kid's right here." And the guy dead looks him right in the eye and goes, "Hey, if you got a connection in the family, stick with it." It's just the best delivered line, and it's so quick, and it's just like I'm just like cracking up because the kid is like 12 years old.
I'm a little disappointed. Thanks a lot, Beef. That was our next episode, top 10 titties in a movie. So,
well, there you go. I spotted you one. There you go. You get check that out if you haven't seen that yet.
Could we get away with that? No.
Like Beef, so that and Phoebe Cates, where are you ranking them?
I would put Kimberly MacArthur over because the Phoebe Cates thing was a more like you're yearning for this character the entire time. You're hoping that the Kimberly MacArthur one was 1, you're shocked. 2, they are a gigantic set of tits that you're not expecting to see in a movie. Like you don't see that in a movie. Like, it was like, what the hell is that? It's like, he just walks into the yard and he looks and and she's like, "Hey, how you doing?" It's all part of the setup, but still it's tremendous.
It's just totally random. Like, I remember when I first watching, I'm like, what the fuck? And then and Rodney's known for his like one-liners. His delivery is so great. And his facial expressions. Yeah, totally a hilarious moment in the movie. But definitely, I thought it was pretty crazy that they actually wanted Bill Murray to play the role of Patty. He dropped out, and Tom Noonan actually took that role. Tom Noonan, who you got remembers from RoboCop 2. That's the only thing I ever remember him from as the bad guy in RoboCop 2. But I can't see Bill Murray playing a small role like that. I think it's perfectly cast the way it is done. And this movie was so popular, it actually knocked out Vegas Vacation. The first movie. It knocked it out of being in the top rank.
Just Vacation, like regular
Vacation? Yeah. It was number 1 for 4 weeks, and this movie knocked it out. So
rightfully so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, it's a movie that, like, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think it's free on Prime with ads, but it's definitely worth, like, the juice is worth the squeeze, as they say.
Oh, yeah. If you've never seen this movie, you absolutely need to watch it. And we didn't even tell you how it ends. So, like, the whole ending will still be, like, brand new to you. So, like,
it's so random,
definitely go
too.
check. It is such a weird-ass ending. I love it.
Yeah, it's so random. But, yeah, definitely check this one out. But let's get into our next one.
Eddie, what are you going to do when I kick your ass? Pick myself up and let you kick me again? Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Just don't put the money in the bank, kid. Because if I don't whip you now, I'm going to whip you next month in Dallas.
You mean Houston? There's nothing coming up in Dallas.
Houston, Dallas. And if not then the month after that in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah? What makes you so sure?
Hey,
back.
1986, The Color of Money, directed by Martin Scorsese, who also directed Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, and Last Temptation of Christ. This movie stars Paul Newman, Tom Cruise, and Mary Elizabeth Mastroianni. It has a budget of $14.5 million and made $52.3 million at the box office. So, Swole, this is one of your picks. Let us know why.
I mean, first of all, the movie takes place in Chicago in the wintertime, or it starts off there at least, right? And he hits the road. It's a Scorsese movie with a fantastic soundtrack. And it is fucking peak Tom Cruise, right? Like right as his career was like taking off. He's this young, arrogant, cocky pool player. Paul Newman's fantastic in it. It's basically a sequel to The Hustler, right? And it's Scorsese. It's just a really, really fun, great movie, and I absolutely love it.
Definitely. Beef?
Yeah, one of the things you learn in this movie, particularly about gambling, and it applies to poker, it applies to pool, is making the matchup for yourself, getting yourself into a good situation to gamble, and like much like young poker players, he does a bad job of this kind of at the beginning of it, talking himself out of matches that would have been very profitable for him, and not kind of understanding the soft skills that are involved in gambling. Yes, you need to develop the skill of like actually winning at the game, but the game beyond the game is getting people who want to gamble with you, and you be a sport and someone that they want to be around and gamble with and give you a chance to win a lot more money. And it's important to learn in this and poker and lots of other things. I know Chorizy mentioned, we'll probably talk about it later, but it's acutely mentioned in making billiards, pool matches, because it's a one-on-one situation.
Right, like you can't just beat the shit out of everybody every time you play them, because no one's going to want to play with you.
Correct.
Well, and Tom Cruise sucked at it at the beginning of this movie.
It's been a while since I saw it, but I'm in my memory, and hopefully I'm not confusing it with The Hustler, but I think there's a scene where he is beating the shit out of like the best player in the whole place. Well, there's another dude that they were there to like juice all the money out of, right? And he's just like, he beats that guy, and then the other guy doesn't want to play. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that's like, you don't walk into a poker room when you know Michael Jordan's going to be there and start beating up all like the best players in the room, right? You wait to get to Michael Jordan's table, and then you go like, yeah, okay, now I'm going to play for real, because
right, you're going to steal all MJ's money.
We're playing for real stakes here now.
Yeah, that guy made $30 million a year in like the 80s. So like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this guy's got money.
I think also like it's another type of movie that I love, and Yumper and I have talked about this, but I love like a good road trip movie, and they're going across country and playing in different pool halls, right? And it's cool. It ages itself a little bit, like kind of like how we talked about Scarface with like some of the soundtrack stuff and some of the cars that they drive, but it doesn't age itself where you don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it. Well, one of the cool parts I really like is any movie that involves Chicago. I love like just to look at it, see how they portray the city. This movie actually rejuvenated Paul Newman's career. He was kind of on the decline, which is kind of crazy because he has such a historic career, and this movie rejuvenated him. He got a Best Oscar award for this, and it's a sequel to, you said, The Hustler. One thing I was reading about this was they tried to get Jackie Gleason to come back and play Minnesota Fats.
Oh, he was sweet, man. He's great in the original.
Yeah, so he was originally in the script when Scorsese decided to, change his role. He didn't really he felt his character wasn't needed. Like he felt because they're going to build a story around him and Eddie again with Tom Cruise like being his protege. Well, when they rearranged the story, Gleason was like, my character doesn't seem like right for this, so I'm gonna decline, and he kind of declined off it. But it would have been kind of nice to see them two again together, because we know Gleason eventually passed away not too long after this. And it'll be kind of cool to see them actually, reunite for a role in the sequel. Another crazy thing I found about this, Chorizy, is our man Iggy Pop's actually in this movie. He's actually as one of the bystanders in one of the scenes with a white shirt on. I didn't notice him. I actually had to look and see, but he's actually in there in like a couple of clips. They have like Forrest Whitaker in this movie. Martin Scorsese actually is the person that breaks the ball, does the break at the end of the movie. So his hands are actually the ones that are racking the balls, and then he breaks them. Tom Cruise did most of his trick shots except one, which is pretty crazy, considering, it's not easy to do those things. And
Right.
I overall like the movie because, like you said, guys mentioned how you're playing the mark. This movie's all about hustling. You can't
That's right.
outshine them if you're gonna try to make money. You're never gonna make money that way.
That's right.
And that's what Paul Newman's trying to do. And Tom Cruise's character is so egotistical. He's such an asshole. Dude wears his fucking name on his shirt, Vince.
Vince, the whole movie, just his first name. It's hilarious.
And eventually, the student becomes a teacher, and it kind of gets Eddie back into the game. And I thought it was very well done. It just surprised me that Ebert didn't like this movie.
Where does this rank? Where does this rank on your list and of Scorsese movies, like non-mobster movies?
I mean, it's not. I'll probably top 10. I wouldn't put it in the top 5, but top 10. What about you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was gonna say I don't know if I pay enough attention to Scorsese movies that aren't mob movies since I'm so engrossed in them. But this is a great movie, and the approach of bringing along the protege angle there, especially in high stakes gambling, is always interesting to me. The fact that someone would be even willing to be the mentor in those situations, because a lot of those secrets are things that people don't want passed down. They don't want to give away for free. So it is always an interesting story.
Well, and then it's the age-old story too, right? Like Paul Newman knew that the way to get to this guy was through his girlfriend, right? And he did that, and Tom Cruise put the pussy on a pedestal.
Totally did. And Jack brings up a good point. John Turturro's in it. He's actually one of the guys he just beats the shit out of.
Yeah,
and then goats him to come back and play. I think it's really done really well. It kind of shows that, the kind of like the inside of how a hustler thinks. And one of my favorite parts is actually when Vince breaks, when Eddie's sitting at the bar talking to his girl and he hears the break and he just turns because it's like that itch just needs to be scratched. He heard something, reminded him of something in the past. And sometimes people fall into their old habits, and that's what he basically did. But it's definitely a great movie. And it's only the only movie that Scorsese ever had come under budget. So that's why I think
it sounds like a miracle.
Yeah. So that was one of his triumphs of this movie. But yeah, if you haven't seen this one, check it out. It's a little dated, but it's still worth it. But let's get into our next one, gentlemen.
So, it's time to set the hook in Dickstown. Do it just like I told you. Yeah. Exactly like I told you. Okay. Then the party's on me when it's over. Hey, man. Gabe, when it's over, we'll all be lucky to get away before they kill us. You know the difference between a hustler and a good con man? What? Hustler has to get out of town as quick as he can. But a good con man, he doesn't have to leave until he wants to.
1992's Diggstown, directed by Michael Ritchie, who also directed movies such as The Golden Child, Cool Runnings, The Scout, Fletch, Wildcats, Drive Madness, and Bad News Bears. It's also written by Steve McRae, who wrote Hard to Kill, one of Swole's favorite movies, and Dark Man 2. It stars James Woods, Louis Gossett Jr., Bruce Dern, Heather Graham, and Oliver Platt. The movie only made $4.8 million, which is surprising on a $17 million budget. Beef, I know this is one of your picks, so tell us why you picked it.
Yeah, I would consider it probably my number one gambling movie because it sets up the big con, a big gamble, a big bet, all kind of across the board, and teaches a lot of different lessons as far as gambling goes. But James Woods' character, Gabriel Kane, is like the perfect con man in this situation because he's well dressed, he's loved by a bunch of people and hated by a bunch of people. He's got that where he's got the love-hate situation across him where you want to beat him, and that's where he gets in against Bruce Dern's character, John Guillaume, who actually owned the entire town of Diggstown, and what it was fixing a fight. Now Guillaume actually won the town fixing a fight of a local legend who he was the manager of many years before. Gabriel Kane learned this information and then built an entire con around this stuff. The one of the key tenets here is counterparty risk. When you're going to make a big bet, can the other person actually afford to pay, and will they actually pay you? And so that's why in some parts of this movie, you see Heather Graham's character helping these guys search around to make sure that they understand his financial depth so that they could get their hands on absolutely everything that he had. And they knew that Diggstown was the type of town where gambling was extremely important and word was word. So they knew that they could actually win a substantial bet from this group. And also knew that, like, in these situations, like, you see Oliver Platt working all the side action during it. So it's not just a big bet. They're also making lots of small bets with the entire crowd, the entire group of people that live in Diggstown, and have them absorbing some of the costs of the con as well, not understanding that the guy they brought in to fight, Louis Gossett Jr.'s character, is a former professional, someone who does cash fighting kind of on the regular and is likely going to, win all these matches against it. You also need to find someone who has a big enough ego, even when they know an impossible bet is coming, that they're going to be willing to take it. I mean, this is like a Amarillo Slim style bet where it sounds unbelievable, like hitting a golf ball a mile. And then he turns around and hits the ball on the concrete and it skids for a mile because a golf ball will never stop on concrete. Those are the kind of weird things that, Amarillo Slim would win in prop bets. This is what Gabriel Cain's presenting here in this Diggstown bet, the, win 10 matches in 24 hours situation. But they kind of had all their angles figured out here. And so for me, this movie, just like great theatrics, great actors, top to bottom. And I love that it bombed, because then it's the cult classic that I really believe it is. And so when I think gambling, this is the movie I immediately think of. And if it's on, I stop and watch it every single time.
So I just saw this movie for the first time because you recommended it, and it was on the list. And there's a couple things that stand out. One, Bruce Dern is just a dirtball, right? Like, he's a scumbag.
Perfect villain, right?
Right,
Perfect
absolutely.
Villain.
And when he meets James Wood in the ringside, sitting ringside, he's like, "That's my seat," right? You know he's going to be a scumbag. The second scene is apropos because we have the dudes from the 108 on this show, and Oliver Platt, who I fucking love. He's the guy that's trying to set up this bet, and James Woods gives him this stuff where he could drink a crap ton of beer and not get drunk. And James Wood looks at the next morning. He's like, "Hey, look, I said he wouldn't get drunk. I didn't say he wouldn't have a hangover." And it was fucking hilarious. I thought this movie was really, really good. I am so surprised I had never seen it before, and just thank you for recommending it. Because I love Oliver Platt. I've always loved Oliver Platt.
Well, he's amazing in that scene too that you mentioned, Svo, because they're in the hotel room. He's hungover, he's barfing and everything, and that's when he realizes that Gabriel has not gone to the fighter and told him about the con yet. So there is still a chance.
Yeah,
he doesn't know. So they're like, that's how good of a confidence man Gabriel Cain is. James Wood's character is that he didn't even tell the other guy yet that's going to be involved in this. He just knows that he could con this guy into doing it, and of course he does.
And Bruce Dern just has this southern dirtball charisma in this movie that is just absolutely perfect. Like, he smiles, and it's almost like in the Grinch, where his smile just doesn't stop. It just goes up and up and up, and he's got the southern drawl, and it's just really good.
What about you, Chorizy?
Oh man, I love this movie, and I love that we segued from Color of Money into this, because it is the pool hustle right up front. But I just know that Beef has this on here just because of Heather Graham. That's it. It was just
that's a young Heather Graham. She's so hot, and it's so funny because it's one of the rare situations where my wife is like, my wife doesn't give me shit ever about like checking out, but she does not think Heather Graham's attractive. So she always gives me shit about Heather Graham. See, she loves the movie too, but she thinks Heather Graham's a dog face. We're different polar opposites on Heather Graham there, but Heather Graham is good in this too. Girl? Because Heather Graham's got to play kind of both sides of this, right? She's on the Mark side effectively, but it was her brother who fed the information to Gabriel Cain, who later ended up getting killed, and then he ends up, because he got the information by mistake. He was someone that they didn't ever want to have this information, and they knew they needed to eliminate. But the fact that he was able to pass it on to James Wood's character, that's why she was able to help the group and wanted to help the group and get this bet done.
I mean, there's nothing better than the little tie thing at the end. I'm all in for that. Like, it's just such a, like, it's what you were talking about it, like where they really set it up for Bruce Dern to be the villain, and then that little tie thing at the end, just shove it right up his ass, is just the best thing ever.
Great underrated movie. Like, it's so early 90s, it's ridiculous. Like, I even used the graphic for anybody that's like listening to the audio version of it. The graphic is the movie poster, and it says available on video cassette and laser disc. Right. So like it's just that early '90s perfection.
So this is one of the movies that I like. We always ask people like what they watch on a rainy day. Besides Fifth Element, this is another movie I watch because I love the whole concept of playing the big con. I think James Woods is phenomenal in this movie. Another thing that always stuck out to me as a kid, I always thought Bruce Dern's character was Ted Turner. I have no.
It might be.
You mean like a take on Ted Turner, like kind of like this is like a Southern bad guy kind of thing, like interesting.
And he kind of looks like him too. So I was like,
yes.
I always thought, is that who they're trying to be? Is Ted Turner? Oliver Platt is great, as his buddy that's setting up the. I love the scene when they play pool and he beats Bruce Dern's son for his ride.
Who's the kid in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yes.
He's the older brother in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
And then you got Jesus Christ, who's his best friend, who says some racial things in the movie, and then he goes.
Oh, you mean the guy that saved all the sex traffickers, Jim Caviezel?
Yeah, it's just it has so many great. I love the fact how they go through the kind of how they're fixing fights, and fixing fights has been something like in the history of time. It goes way back to the 20s, 30s, and even Ali's say Ali Liston fight was fixed. There's the Holyfield Lewis fight was that ended the draw. They said was fixed. Just it's something that's always been part of boxing history, and then to hear them go through. Oh, we're gonna give this guy something that makes him shit his pants, or we're gonna have this guy hook up with a girl that's gonna wear him out.
Thank you for bringing up the brown bottle. All right, I was worried we weren't gonna talk about
it. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's just greatly. It's perfectly done, and like how, and then one of the lines that I always thought was hilarious is when he gets told by but the guy from New York Undercover, Michael Lorenzo, he gets beat up by him to kind of remind him, hey, keep your eye on the ball, and he's like, I hate being hanged. I just hate it, and I'm like, who the fuck likes being hanged? Like, why would you say that? But it's just parts like lines like that. And Beef, I almost used the for the opening clip. Was when he gives an inspirational speech to Louis Gossett Jr. to Roy and tells him he's stronger than you, he's better than you. Remember, you're black. He's like, what?
What does that mean?
He's like, I don't know, man. I'm trying to motivate you. It's like a risk thing. He's like, what?
He's like, you're a shit with no motivation.
Yeah, it's just like has great comedic timing. And I always like this movie because of that. And also Benny the Jet is the fucking referee, which is kind of out of nowhere because that guy's like a badass in martial arts, and he's just a randomly the referee in the movie, which I was like, what the fuck? But the movie's just very enjoyable. I'm so happy you finally got to see it because I really like this one.
I had never seen it before this week.
And Beef, James Woods and Heather Graham actually dated during this time, so that's why.
Whoa, I did not know that. That makes me upset
for James Woods. Hey, Yump, I got a question. I got a question for you, Yum, because we have the list like a week in advance. And I know Brian's in the audience right now, and I know he hates it when I bring it up. But how come you didn't put on the 1992 classic Gladiator with James Marshall and Cuba Gooding Jr.?
I was thinking about that. I really was thinking about putting it on there.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Second best boxing movie after Gladiator.
That's the best. That's the best movie named Gladiator, by the way.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
By far the best. And it's crazy that you bring that up because 1992 was a big year for sports movies. You had Gladiator, which we just talked about, The Babe, White Men Can't Jump. You had A League of Their Own, The Mighty Ducks, Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck, A River Runs Through It, Wind, and The Cutting Edge that were all released this year. So it was a big year for sports movies.
You know what's crazy? I love all those movies.
I do too. And I just think this movie kind of got lost in the shuffle in terms of like sports. But it's so much more in it, and that's why I like it so much. And like you said, Beef, it's got that cult status now. And if you haven't checked this one, definitely check this one out because it's totally worth your time.
Man, I would definitely go to a drive-in to watch Digstown and Gladiator back to back. That would be the best night.
The best night ever would be if it was a triple feature with the other classic, Judgment Night with Emilio Estevez.
Oh man! Well, we'll just listen to the soundtrack on the way there.
That's a favorite soundtrack too, Chorizy. But speaking of Gladiator, like randomly, if I'm at work, if I'm working from home and I'm coding, I have like a movie on. It's usually Gladiator, and I'll send a picture to Beef, and I'm like, I'm watching this right now, and he just always pops.
It's a classic Bridgeport movie, my friend.
That's another part too of the movie. I told you, Beef. Like I find it hilarious. He's like, "Where are you from?" And he's like, Bridgeport, and the guy's like, "What Bridgeport? Like what? Like it's Slumboard North or some shit? It's still
Right.
Southside. Like what the fuck are you talking about?"
It's right there.
Yeah, but it's definitely that. So Jack tells it like it's just a product of poor advertising. Also, that and it was there was kind of swallowed up in all the other movies that were made. But if you haven't seen it, check out Digstown. But let's get into our next one, gentlemen.
What's your problem? I'm putting $500,000 on Lucky Down to win third race at Riverside.
Can't lay that off in time. Bet like that could break us.
Not only are you a cheat, you're a gutless cheat as well.
1973's The Sting, directed by George Roy Hill, who also directed Slapshot, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and Slaughterhouse-5. The movie stars Robert Redford, Paul Newman, Robert Shaw, and Eileen Brennan. It had a budget of $5.5 million and made a whopping $159.6 million. This is 1973, which is crazy. Chorizy, this is your pick. Tell us why.
Yeah, this is actually just one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Newman and Redford are just fantastic actors, right? And like so they're back and forth in this, and everything they do in this movie is great. But the story is just so compelling, right? Like because you start off with the small timers that hit the wrong guy, and one guy ends up getting killed, and that was like Redford's mentor, and it kind of sends him off into this direction to go find a new mentor that he was the other guy go find, and they decide to basically out of revenge to pull off this massive con against the worst guy, right? Like so, it's just like such an impossible task that they're taking on. They've got the cops chasing them the whole time. They've got cops that aren't cops chasing them at parts. You've got a guy chasing him who's actually protecting him. Like there's just like everything is like, it's not what it seems the entire movie through. And the gambling aspects of it are incredible. Especially like as me and Beef got older and started doing some of these, getting into some of these things, the main con here is on something called The Wire, and The Wire's the basis of it is past posting. So if you don't know what past posting is, it's exactly what me and Beef were talking about with the draft thing, like where Adam Schefter's already gotten the information. He knows what the draft pick is going to be. He sends that out, and then the bettors gamble on it. This was a dude at the Western Union getting who's winning these races. And before he passes it off to the bookies, he's hanging off to this other guy to say, go bet this before they get it. And it's just such a great like gambling movie all around. The poker game where it's like, where he's like, what am I supposed to say? He cheated better than I did. Like, I just like, it all just works. And Newman is incredible in this movie, just absolutely incredible, all the way down to the last minute of the movie where you're sure something has just happened and the exact opposite has happened. It's just, I can't say enough good things about this. As you could see by how worked up I am, this is just like, to me, just like almost a perfect movie.
Definitely. Beef.
Yeah, Treasy mentioning the card game. It's like, and also this movie brings up to like knowing who to trust. It's not only finding yourself a good gamble, finding yourself a good spot, but who's going to backstab you? Who's going to give you information? Who's going to withhold things from you? Who might try to undercut you in situations like that? And so sometimes in these spots, you might think you got something good, but you always got to protect yourself and protect all angles. Also, Treasy mentioned the past posting and kind of the information. It's the exact same concept as in Trading Places. When they're trying to buy the crop report off of Clarence Beeks, it's the exact same shit, basically. So now in that one, it got intercepted. They found out that it was happening. They got a bogus report and they end up losing their ass. And something like that can obviously happen in a situation where you think you're getting single-ended information and someone else intercepts it or blocks it or gives you something incorrect on purpose. Yeah, as Treasy mentioned, an all-time great movie, an old Chicago movie also, which is, just a lot of fun. And one I probably should rewatch again. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but it's always worth a rewatch.
Definitely. Swell?
So it's a movie that I've only seen once or twice. I'm self-admittedly not the biggest Robert Redford fan. Like, I don't hate Robert Redford. Like, I don't hate him. It's not that at all. But I'm also not like, oh, Robert Redford's in this, I gotta go see it. I like The Natural. I know that's a hot topic amongst our group chat. But it's a great movie. It's very highly rated as one of the all-time greats. It is a fun watch. Now, you brought up something there that I want to just touch on a little bit. You talked about Trading Places and the Clarence Beeks and what you just talked about. Would you consider Trading Places, Wall Street? Would you consider those gambling movies?
Yeah,
right, because they kind
sure.
of are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Well, the stock market is gambling.
Absolutely, it is.
In fact, it's more.
But it's not like
might be more gambling than what people consider gambling.
Right. And the reason that I ask is because you don't necessarily consider those things like, oh, it's not a game. It's like someone's profession, but you're gambling, right? Like every day, it's a risk what you're doing when you're trading. So like if
without a doubt, there is way more bullshit going on in corporate America than there is in the NFL game that you're watching tonight that you get bet on. Without a doubt. And you know nothing about the shit that's going on. And you know a lot about the NFL.
Not to mention, that's all fixed. That's a fixed game.
That is fixed. That is a fixed game.
You could say the NFL's fixed all you want. Corporate America is a fixed fucking game.
Definitely a fixed fucking game.
As people working in it, yes, it is.
That's fantastic. So if we had gone back and we had included like that in there, would you put Wall Street or would you put Trading Places in your list of gambling movies?
I like the ones that I picked, but yeah, I love Wall Street. I mean, just as it's one of my favorite movies, without a doubt to begin with. And so it definitely applies to the group right here. In fact, it's funny. I put when we booked Jeff Passan for the 108 podcast, but we couldn't say we had him on there yet. I put I bagged the elephant video out just with no disclaimer on my account, just like the signal we did some shit and you guys are going to see it soon. And so it's something that I go back to Wall Street all the time. One of my favorite movies.
So follow-up question. How much cocaine did Oliver Stone do while he made Wall Street?
We almost ran out.
I'm not gonna get him tweeting at me, right? Like, hey, until you've walked a mile in someone else's shoes, don't judge what others have done.
I didn't.
No, what you guys said about the movie, I can just elaborate a little more on it. Like, totally agree with you. This movie, I really like the fact that it actually shows, like, it goes to a screen to show you the certain like events that are transpiring of the big con. It's something I really like. I love this color scheme in this movie. Like, I love the fact it's based in the 30s, Depression era. I love the color schemes, the costumes. I'm just a sucker, like a film nerd, like that way, but I love the way it's done. It made so much money back then. And to me, when I think of gambling movies or even the heist movies, this is one of the movies that comes straight to my mind because it's a movie that is so perfectly done to show you everything that it's kind of like if people pay homage to it. And even in Ocean's 11, Chorizy, how they gives a little slip ending at the end, like everybody knows what's going to happen at the end. Ocean's 11 kind of does that. The third one, it has like a little twist to it. Like the cons know what's going on, how to play the game the correct way. And everybody, I love the fact that he goes, Kid Twist goes out and gets the 20 best con men to work in their racetrack. I love the fact that he's doing that. I love the fact that it points out how cops can be fucking manipulated. Robert Shaw, I love him. And he's not. Yeah,
not anymore. Don't worry.
Just a movie. Don't worry about
it. Robert Shaw, when he's not killing sharks or getting eaten by sharks, is great as a complete asshole. Yeah. It has another connection to Fast Time at Richmond High with J.J. Singleton, played by Roy Walton, who's Mr. Hand, which I think is great.
He's awesome in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought this up to you off air before we got on. This movie also has Joe Torture, who's actually the guy with the black gloves. He's as an assassin. He's actually a stuntman for Big Trouble in Little China, which I think is
amazing.
Great. And there's a Star Wars connection here as well, Chorizy. You know how?
How's that?
Robert Earl Jones, who plays Luther Coleman, is James Earl Jones' father.
I did not know that. That's amazing. That's he's
perfect choice.
He's awesome in that movie, in the movie too. And like he's like the impetus for the whole thing going down, right? Like they run that con, steal the money from a guy who's just basically running numbers. turns out to be one of Lonigan's guys. They kill Luther, and then it is similar to is that Ocean's 13, right? Where they're like there's emotion in this con for Luther, just like in Ocean's 13, where they're like trying to not become overly emotional about the con that they're running and getting in too far. So it's there's a good parallel there as well. But yeah, I mean, like, just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, just great stuff. And it's kind of crazy because Redford actually didn't want to do this movie. His agent was telling him, don't do comedies. And then he's like, well, why? You know, I'm Robert Redford. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to do a comedy. And when he turned down the role initially, they offered it to Jack Nicholson, who Reddit's like, he turned it down, and Redford took it. And this is Redford's only Oscar-nominated role, which I think is pretty crazy considering the longevity of his career that he's had. This movie won 7 Oscars. It made a whopping shitload of money at the time. And it's definitely something you guys should check out if you haven't seen it. It's a little long, but it's played out beautifully the way, and they explain everything to you, kind of how everything goes, which I think is awesome.
You definitely get kind of what they're doing, throughout it. Like I think that could be complicated when you're doing kind of these complicated grifts or gambling things where it's tough to explain. Like, this is exactly what's happening. They do a really good job of kind of playing it out so you understand what's going on and why they're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And another just a final, point on this. Redford didn't see this movie in 2004.
What?
Never watched the movie until 2004, which I thought is hilarious, considering it came out like 30 years prior. But
Tracy, it's like my sock summer never rewatching our live streams. He never goes back and listens, never goes back and watches. It's perfect when he leaves. That's what he feels.
No, but if you guys haven't seen this thing, definitely check it out. It's a great movie. But let's get into our next one, gentlemen.
Let me make one thing clear to you. I am not your father. You are not my friend. This is a business. You were only as good to me as the money you make, and right now it's not worth a hell of a lot. You're going to give me back everything you lost.
No, I can't do that. That money was for Harvard. I have made you so much more than what I just lost.
It doesn't matter, Ben. You had very clear instructions, and you didn't follow them. You didn't do your job. You weren't counting. You were gambling.
2008's 21, directed by Robert Lukitic, who also directed Legally Blonde, The Killers, Monster Law, and The Ugly Truth. This movie stars Kevin Spacey, Lawrence Fishburne, Kate Bosworth, and Jim Sturgis. It had made $159 million at the box office and a budget of $35 million. Swole, this is one of your picks. Tell us why.
So, first of all, I love this movie. The guy that wrote this movie, his name is Ben Mesrich. He also wrote a book called The Accidental Billionaires, which they turned into a movie that you may have heard of called The Social Network. And he also wrote another movie called The Anti-Social Network, which is, there is a new movie out. No. There's a new movie out right now with Paul Dano called Dumb Money about the GameStop stock shortage. He knows how to write stories like this. It's based on a true story of MIT kids that took down, these Vegas casinos. And say what you want about Kevin Spacey. He's a fantastic actor, and he acted his ass off in this. It's also got Lawrence Fishburne in it, and I love movies with Lawrence Fishburne, and I have ever since he was Furious Styles and Boys in the Hood. Lawrence Fishburne is one of my favorite actors. I always thought that this movie came out around a time when Jim Sturgis was like the next big thing. He was in that Beatles movie Across the Universe, and then he did 21. Kate, what's her name? Kate Bosworth is his love interest in this, and she's really, really good in this. And then there's a really, really, really young Josh Gad as like his nerdy MIT partner. I love card movies where they're counting cards and trying to take advantage of the system. I feel it's very much like this thing that we talk about on White Sox Twitter, where if you feel any empathy towards billionaire owners, then you're a fucking idiot, right? Like, I don't give a shit about these casinos. They took them for what they could. Lawrence Fishburne was trying to track them down. I just think this is a really, really fun, well-made movie. I actually watched it on my lunch today while I was at work to prep, and it's just a movie that I really, really like. Yeah.
Definitely. Beef.
Yeah, I'm glad to jump in here. First, let me jump on what Zvo said. Yeah, casinos are scumbags, and you should take them for everything you can, especially back in the day, trees, the offshores. They would angle shoot the shit out of you to try to get money from you, so you always had to take the best of it for yourself. Yeah, 21's great. I like it. I like a lot of the blackjack lore and the stories. The way it works, so for people that know roughly card counting works, is the composition of the deck changes as cards come out, and so it could become more favorable or less favorable for you. As it becomes more favorable, people bet more. Now, this is also how casinos catch you. So if you're sitting there yourself counting cards, you start raising your bets as the deck gets better. That's where they kind of have a good eye on you. What they use in 21 and also in the MIT, the books about the team, is they use the big player method. What happens there is you have people on the table counting. As the deck gets favorable, you signal in someone else to come in and play. They start betting big bets off the top, so you never see the volatility in bets. That person's always a big player or big better. They come in there. They're the ones always handling the money. Now, that person who's betting big also has to play a character, because if you're coming in betting $5,000 off the top, you can't look like you have a baseball cap on and you're some college kid. You have to have a role, especially if you're a young-looking person. You got to look like you're wealthy, affluent, etc. And so the whole making a whole cast of people to fill out a blackjack team is more than just understanding the count back and forth and understanding the mathematics. It's also about a show. It's also about understanding where you're getting heat, where casinos are starting to notice you, etc. This movie kind of covers all that stuff in a dramatic way, maybe probably a little more dramatic than necessary, but big players existed since the 1970s, but they were able to bring it back in the 90s. And then obviously this movie's from 2008. So, things go away and then they come back. But I agree with Zvo. I love this movie, and Spacey's great. And he's an asshole in this movie, such an asshole. But I mean, he is. He is, but the head of a gambling group sometimes is an asshole like that. And so you kind of see that.
Well, I think the quote that Yump used was perfect. He's like, you're not counting, you're gambling. You didn't do your job.
That's right.
Yeah.
The only comment I have on this movie is I want to ask Larry Fishburne, how do you get fired on your day off? That's the only thing I want to know from him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's much worse than that in the movie, but it's yeah, he's not at the casino that he's at when he gets in trouble. That's the original, or the origin story of his relationship with Spacey.
But
yeah,
I think I read that they were kind of pissed off at the casting of Jim Sturgis and Kate Bosworth, because the group of kids that did it were 6 Asian kids. So they kind of whitewashed this a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I think that the cast in this movie was good, and I the controversy with Kevin Spacey alone in it is enough. So.
Totally agree. Really can't elaborate on what you guys said. The only thing I have with it is the whitewashing of the cast, because John Jawanda was a member of this team. Jeff Ma, who's actually Jeff Sturgis's character is based off. I wish they would have did a little more closer to the origin of the team, which would have been better. But it's done very, very well. Lawrence Fishburne is a complete asshole as well, and just shows how at the end, of the movie, how he can be dirty too. So
yeah,
and it's a very, and I remember even growing up, counting cards is always oh, you can count cards, and everybody's oh, this is a legal way, and I'm always you think it's legal, but they're gonna fuck you up if you keep trying to count cards. I mean.
Oh yeah, you'll be kicked out. Even if they don't harass you, or even if they don't physically bother you, you won't be allowed to play. They'll find you playing, and they'll say no, you can't play, and they'll trespass you eventually, or not allow you in.
It's not illegal. It's just frowned upon, like masturbating on an airplane. Thanks a lot, Bin Laden.
I knew you were gonna bring that one. But yeah, definitely, I like the art direction of the movie. I think it's a perfectly told story. Just the casting was something that just threw me out. But
I like the behind the scenes stuff of the eyes in the sky, watching the tables for the different tips and the different tricks. And you get into it in one of the other movies that were coming up. He signals him, he's got a buzzer on his leg, right? It's just it's fucking cool, man.
Money or the hammer.
This is cool. Yeah, you want the money or the hammer? Yeah. I think this is a good fun movie where I like gambling movies in general. So,
and also it shows the preparation they had to do to even get to the point of making money, of repetition, learning theory, learning best way to count decks, which I thought was very interesting. I love that aspect when they add those things in there to show how they got as good as they were. Even though they were smart, they still needed actually to train their thinking a certain way. Which I thought
a lot of practice because you're out in the field and everything's not as sterile as when you're doing your practice at home. A lot of shit is going to be going on around you. So in order to stay
because
focused,
if everything went the way it did in practice, Justin Fields would be the fucking MVP of the league right now, right? Like, it's just you got to play real life scenarios. If you want to read books that are written like it's a movie script, check out Ben Mesrich's books, like The Accidental Billionaires and the one about dumb money about the GameStop shortage, because they're easy reads, but they're fun and they're good. And he wrote this script too. So
yeah, they are.
I'll also say if you want to look at it and go like, oh, counting cards, that seems really, really great way to win at the casinos. I would recommend you read up on like easy card counting. There's like a method that's like really simple. And then go try and do that for like, don't actually act on it and try and bet on it. Just try and keep count at an actual casino and see how fucking difficult that is. It's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to do it again, but Rain Man practically bankrupted the casino and he was a retard.
A what? It's hard. No, definitely. Yeah, it's a lot more work that goes into it and people think is really easy. And I do have friends that are like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm not betting with you.
No.
Yeah, but definitely, I just like that aspect of the movie. But let's get into our next one, gentlemen.
You tell him you're sure I've gone crazy, but I want to place 10 big ones on the Reds for the whole show.
I'm laying bets for Rothstein.
You're laying bets for me. That thief in judo, not, but he just giving me a loan.
Well, then what's left for the players?
Jimmy, you know what you feed a dray horse in the morning if you want a day's work out of him?
What?
Just enough so he knows he's hungry.
1988's 8 Men Out, directed by John Sayles, who also plays Lone Star, Men with Guns, Limbo, Passion Fish. He actually plays Ring Lardner in the movie due to his resemblance. And he directed a bunch of Bruce Springsteen videos like Glory Days, Born in the USA, I'm on Fire. The movie stars John Cusack, Michael Rooker, Owen Mahoney, and David Strathairn. It has a budget of $6 million and a box office of 5.6. So this is one of my picks. And the reason I picked this movie is because it gives another different aspect on how gambling was. Well, first, it's off a historic event. And it gives an aspect of how gambling sometimes plays a role to the people who need the money that are actually professional athletes. And in this case, underpaid professional athletes in the 1990 White Sox. And it just shows how their owner treated them like shit, not giving bonuses, giving them flat champagne, not paying them what they were worth. So they're like, well, fuck it. We're going to make money off of the bookies. And I love the fact how it goes through how, even though it's fictionalized, how everything was set up with Arnold Rothstein having his own crew. And then you have his lieutenant have his own crew with Sleepy Bill Burns. And in the end, the players are the ones that actually get screwed over because they don't really make the money off it. Everybody else makes money off it. It's one of those classic movies that I always liked. I love the fact Charlie Sheen's in it before he got into Major League. So it's like a precursor to him playing ball. I know how people give him a lot of shit, but I think John Cusack does a great job as Buck Weaver. And it's a Chicago-based movie. I always loved the story about it. I always thought it was interesting. I always used to read about Buck Weaver and Joe Jackson and why they were kept out of baseball, which I think they should be really let in, especially with baseball doing betting now. It's an aspect of the game that's there. The world's different. And the crazy thing about this movie is there's a rumor that the players actually got this idea from the 1918 Cubs when they lost against Boston. People claim they threw that game. And Swede was talking to a player on the Cubs on a train ride. He told him they threw it. And that's when him and Chick got the idea to maybe throw this from what they were talked about a year prior, which I think is crazy.
I need that to
ruin
be true.
Everything, man.
I need
Cubs
that to be true more than anything.
Well, it's crazy because that was the last time the Cubs made the World Series until 2016. And I'm like, damn, they had to throw it. The same thing with the Sox. The Sox didn't make it to 2005, and they had to throw the. It's just like, what the fuck are we doing?
59. They made it in 59.
Did the White
last time
Sox win the
yeah.
World Series in 2005? I didn't realize.
Yeah.
They made the World Series in 1959 against the
The
Dodgers.
White Sox.
So they lost that one in there. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's still like still a
50-year
gap, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, what do you guys think, Chorizy?
Oh, I think there's just so many great aspects to this movie, and they do a good job of showing like how much people loved those players, right? The kids like following around Buck and stuff, and like people just loved the baseball players. They were stars. There was the way that they packed the crowds for the World Series, like you might think back and go like baseball wasn't that big back then. That's why they weren't getting any money. No, those stadiums were packed for the World Series. There was 30,000 people in those stadiums in those times. And it's like, yeah, these guys are like rock stars and they're getting paid like nothing. Just like they're not making any money. This is bound to happen. This is what you see. Where you see this today is in like low level tennis matches or third league soccer. Like you see these kind of gambling things happen in those because the players, they're kind of love of the game players. They're trying to come up in the business, and like someone offers them a lot more than they make in a year, they're going to take it. Right. You can't do that with the major leagues now. So it seems insane. But when you look back at it, when you're like, okay, they were packing it in the same way that they are now. And they were just going like, you don't get anything. This has to happen. Like this is the absolute result of something like that. And so like I love that aspect of it. And they built that properly to show like these guys were loved. There were tons of people at the game. Everybody's talking about this everywhere. It's a huge media thing. And so I like that were able to build that in the movie. I also, you know me, I'm a conspiracy theory guy. I love the people that say Joe Jackson was in on it. Joe Jackson's just so damn good that when they were down or like the game was already out of hand, then he'd start hitting. Then he'd start padding his stats so that it wouldn't look like he was in on it. That is a conspiracy theory that I absolutely love.
Love it.
Yeah, but for that to work, it means that he was like intelligent enough to do so. Like besides playing ball, all the stuff that's put out about him is that he couldn't read or write. Like his life was baseball. So I think he was just.
There's been tons of smart people throughout our world that couldn't read and write. That's
true.
Figure out all this shit.
True. I do like in the movie how they tell him, like Sweet tells him, "Hey, they're telling you to take it easy. Don't push so bad." Like they tell him because he takes the money, but they tell him, just take it easy. Don't push too hard, which I thought was pretty interesting. And also the fact that he stares into a candle with each eye, which is fucking weird.
He took the instruction well.
What about you, Beef?
First off, no John Cusack slander because he's a big Beefloaf fan. He follows me on Twitter. We're mutual follows on Twitter, so I just want to throw it out there for them. I love how huge the story is because the Arnold Rothstein character in the Godfather, that's Timon Roth, right? I mean, that's supposed to be he's supposed to be the same guy, right? So he's kind of introducing fixing sports, right?
He's not supposed to be the same guy.
He's based off him, and
but he mentions him in the movie because he says I've loved. He says something like I've loved baseball ever since.
So he was in cahoots with him, basically.
Since Rothstein fixed the World Series in 1919. Yeah.
He takes a mixture from Lance. He's mostly based off Lansky because his line, we like American Steel. He makes a line about American Steel. But that's a Lansky, but he has some influence from Rothstein.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love movies where they're fixing, but truth be told, I don't like the movies where they outright lose. I prefer like Blue Chips, where Tony just shaved some points. They still won the game like that. Like that's the kind of fixing in the game I like right there. Tony needed the money. He didn't know what to do. So like he played terrible in that one game. And they go back and watch the tape and it's like, oh yeah, he played like shit. They should have won this game by 20. They only won by 8. And that's the way they did. I like shaving in those instances, not so much throwing the entire thing. But I guess, Chorizy brought it up. This is what brings these types of things. The inequities are going to bubble to the top. And actually, legal sports betting markets are the ones that find these things. All the point shaving scandals you've ever heard of are because some legal betting market saw ridiculous action going down on something you wouldn't think no one would bet on. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, some shit is happening here. So everyone has to, take a look and drill down on the thing. So like, I think like keeping all these types of things underground is generally bad. And so this movie is another example showing that, like, if you keep the underground, well, a lot of things can happen underneath there. If you kind of lift it up, let it be legal and let everyone get an eyeball on it, you're less likely to run into those things.
Beef, that's a great point on the point shaving thing and the legal gambling market, because if you ever watched the documentary on the ASU point scandal, the the problem that they had was these guys were laying off the money in regular casinos, right? They weren't going to like bookies or anything. They were laying it off at casinos. They got like $1 million in on this team. The line's moving like crazy, and then there's like kids from ASU coming to Vegas and just like in like their school gear, like the ASU gear, betting like $50 on like the weirdest game of the year to be betting on and betting on the other team, and like it's right. Like, okay, something's going on, and that's actually how they went, how they got busted.
Did you guys ever see I don't know what year it came out, but it was a Ben Affleck, Justin Timberlake gambling movie called Runner, where Ben Affleck's like this Pittsburgh mafia guy that owns an offshore online gaming site, but his computer program cheats the players, and Justin Timberlake discovers it. It's terrible, but it's pretty fucking awesome. Like it's kind of right up this alley. As far as in it. Well, shut up, Yump. As far as this goes, Beef, you will never hear me slander John Cusack. I sat next to John Cusack in the Guaranteed Rate Club that night of the Game 3 ALDS.
Oh, nice.
Hit his
Okay.
homer.
Yeah.
And then as we're walking outside is when that confrontation happened with, a certain member of media. And he was Cusack was as nice as could be, right? He was as nice as could be. But I love that argument. He was like, I played a member of the White Sox in a movie. I could talk about them all I want. Right? Like, I like that argument. I think it's good. But I think the cast of this movie is fucking fantastic. You have Frasier's dad in this movie. You have Charlie Sheen in this movie. D.B. Sweeney plays Shoeless Joe. Just fucking good cast, good movie. This is a great movie.
Yeah, and it has like one of the ending where they see Joe playing at a game 10 like a minor league game, or not even a minor league, independent league game, like 10, 15 years down the road. It's actually been parodied a lot of times. I mean, they actually parodied it in fucking Married with Children with Al Bundy, which I thought was hilarious too. It's such an iconic movie, and it gives like, it tells you the story of what happened back. Now there's other movies of 1919 Black Sox that came out. This is always going to be my favorite because it's another movie that it doesn't get the love it deserves, I think. Maybe from White Sox fans, and movie nerds like myself, but it's not a movie you really hear talk about when you hear about sports movies. It's always easier, especially baseball movies. It's always either Major League or Moneyball. This is a movie that never gets brought up.
I also like that Michael Rooker's in it, Mr. Svenning from Mallrats. Like, he's fucking awesome.
He's Henry, serial
killer.
killer.
Oh,
yeah.
dude.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Good pull.
Chorizy, I am so happy you mentioned that, because me and Brian S were talking about this. Like, we were talking about, there was a subject that came up with serial killers, and Brian S.'s wife is really, really into, true crime.
Like,
And I'm like-
disturbingly into it.
And
Like,
I
if
told her,
Brian's
watch
dead,
Henry.
you know how it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told her, watch Henry, and he's like, oh, we were just going back and forth. The fact you brought that up is hilarious. That's such a brutal movie.
me and Beef and a couple of our friends were at the Blockbuster, of course. Back in the day, we're just like looking at looking for something to rent for the night, and we're just like, what is this? Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Yeah, let's try this out. And we were like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, total tough watch.
Slight
Good
misstep
movie,
for us.
total watch.
You fucked up.
Whoa.
That'll kill the vibe of the night. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's a tough watch, but it's a very good movie, but very tough watch, man. But very good. But let's get into our next one, gentlemen.
I don't know whether you notice or not, but you only have your fucking casino because I made that possible. I'm what counts out here, not your fucking country clubs or your fucking TV shows. And what the fuck are you doing on TV anyhow? You know, I get calls from back home every fucking day. They think you went batshit.
1995's Casino, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Sharon Stone, and James Woods. It had a budget of $50 million and made $116 million at the box office. So, Beef, this is one of your picks. Tell us why.
Yes, absolutely. So it's got many layers here. Number one, Sam Ace Rothstein, played by Robert De Niro, comes up in the gambling business. This is how he becomes like the head of this story here. And really, it's about innovation. It's about understanding, how do I win a bet? How do I beat the bookies that are in place growing up in my hometown? And the way he does that is gathering information. He's just better at getting information on absolutely everything when he's trying to do sports betting. So that's layer number one. Now, number two, when he actually gets there and ends up a part of it, it's understanding his ego and playing to the elements that are outside of the actual gambling part. He's great at being the straightforward casino, setting the games up, bringing sports betting inside the casino. What he's bad at is understanding his ego and understanding the other players that might affect the game. And that being County Commissioner Pat Webb, when his nephew gets a little bit messed up. He doesn't put his ego aside, give the guy some different job that's not gambling, and squash that beef right away. He chooses to marry Ginger, who tells him off the bat that she does not love him, but he plays against the odds. He doesn't use his analytical brain. He goes against that as well. And then finally, against Nicky, the guy who's got his back, he goes over him. He talks around him, tells people back home things about him. He sort of talks out of school. So he, instead of using his analytical brain to run the outside parts of what it takes to be a casino executive, he screws all that stuff up. And by the end, he ends up kind of back in his original place. One thing Svo brought up earlier was a method that they show in the movie, and that Chorizy mentioned, when they catch the guys, they offer them the money or the hammer, where they hammer the guy's hand. What that's called is spooking, what they were doing in the movie there. And that is illegal in casino. So this is you can look at a hole card if a dealer's showing you a whole card, if you're on the table. You can use any information that you get on the table. So if a dealer flips up a whole card, or let's say a card is bent a little bit and you know what that card is, you can use that information if you're on the table. What you can't do is, if you're somewhere else on some other table or off the table, take information that you see on the table and signal to someone who is on the table to use it like that. That's not cool. So what they were doing there is they were using a leg implement to almost do like Morse code to tell the player what the next card coming was. Now, it's also not generally a good idea to, beat the shit out of your players with a hammer and threaten their lives. Now, that was old school Vegas there. But again, that type of casino action right there, that was illegal, and players really shouldn't be doing that sort of thing.
First of all, holy fuck. You are an absolute plethora of knowledge when it comes to gambling. And I am and I mean this with all due respect to both of you, I am so fucking impressed right now. Like the terminology and your knowledge, it's like, my God, it's like, it's unreal. Like, I am so impressed. That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Quasimodo predicted all this.
Exactly.
Well, I'll give you one more with the whole card. If you ever see a dealer look at the whole card twice, they're holding a 4. Because
yeah, that's right. You could read
because they thought it might be an ace. So they have to look again.
Okay.
That's right. Almost no one manually reads anymore, Chorizy. But yeah, if you do find a manual reader, yeah.
If you see a double look on the manual read, you get those downtown still.
Sometimes,
I am so impressed with your knowledge of this stuff and the terminology, and that you know this stuff. It's amazing. I think the other thing in Casino is there is a scene where they're in the restaurant. I think, what was it called? The Leaning Tower. Like, it was Nicky's restaurant in the thing. And he's like, don't make a fuck out of me. Tell me you gambled the money away, and I'll give you more money to pay the light bill. Right. And it's like they don't dive into it too much, but it's like the degenerative side of gambling that they showcase just a little tiny bit that I love in this movie.
Yeah, and it's a
absolutely.
real problem. It's a real problem in the casino industry.
And as someone that lived in Vegas for 2 years, right? Like, it's a whole fucking thing. Have you ever seen that video about the mole people in Vegas? That movie about the mole people in Vegas? Yeah. Like, gambling degeneration is fucking real. And I love that they touched on it. And I just love Pesci's like, don't make a fuck out of me.
Well, that's the blatant one. But the less blatant ones are when he first gets to town, he realizes he can get the dealers under their thumbs. And he has the one dealer he's talked to. Oh, don't worry, Nicky, I'll get it back to you soon or whatever. He realized a lot of those guys were big gamblers. They'd get off their shifts and they'd gamble, and they needed extra money. He knew he could run the juice on all of them. And then obviously Ginger. Ginger also was someone who had problems in that respect too. Now, when she was hustling, she could make money that way, but she also had that degeneracy as well.
With Lester, I know we went to like a big deep dive with Sam because it's based off his a family member. He was Lefty Rosenthal was his great uncle, right? Or his,
that's right. It's his great uncle. Yep.
But like the part of the movie, reason I like this movie a lot too is it gives you the inner workings of the casino. Like you guys already touched on the subjects, how they handle cheats, how they handle the eye in the sky, how they handle, it's even with going back to the cheating aspect, how Robert De Niro says he hired most of the cheats to come work for him to point out when they can find out people are cheating. How there was degenerate gamblers within their their own ranks. How they had like not getting past your ego and seeing your own mistakes with the Ace Rothstein character. How he fired Billy, the guy who does the damn drive-in movies. I can't think of his name right now.
Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah, Joe Bob Briggs. He fired him, because he wasn't smart enough to be on the floor and spotting how slot machines are rigged. That's another aspect of gambling that we don't really get into because there's not really big movies about it, but that gives us like a little window into, hey, the fucking rigging of the slot machines was something big where they kept inventing new tools and using light. And then with the infrared, they had ways of getting rid of the lights, and that's like a big money maker for those who actually do it. Which I thought was a nice they touched on that. I know it's mostly a mob movie because of it's the base of how the mob ran the Stardust Casino, but it has like a lot of nice little aspects of the gambling culture in there as well. And Ginger, like you touched on it, Beef, is another show that she can have vices and be a degenerate herself, and how she runs everybody. From the valet, she took care of everybody, tipping them because she knew they would take care of her. Which I thought was pretty crazy as well. Another thing I found that really hilarious was, I don't know if you guys have seen on TikTok, but Kevin Pollak actually did a podcast, and I think it was Rich Eisen's podcast, and he's explaining, he really enjoyed working in this movie with Robert De Niro, of course, Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone and James Woods. But he said Rickles cracked him up because Pollak's actually a comedian, and Rickles, of course, is the insult king. He said that De Niro would be doing his scenes like all serious, everybody's around them. And Rickles would just be like, that's the way you're going to do it? We're going to do it this way? So fuck with him. And he said De Niro would give him the side eye, like, De Niro laugh. And like, everybody would just start laughing. He goes, but yeah, Rickles didn't give a shit who you were. He just gave you shit no matter what. He goes, so it was always great working with him. I thought that was kind of a funny story he told. But yeah, the cast in here is phenomenal. And this is I want to pivot to what I talked to you about earlier, Beef. You've mentioned this at a White Sox game, and I know we talked about it, where you believe Casino is a better movie to Goodfellas.
Yeah.
So why is that?
I mean, some of it's the complexity of the story. So there's a lot more moving parts in this story than there is in Goodfellas. And also there's the rise and fall here, right? Like Henry Hill's story is interesting and he's a great storyteller, but he stays like a low-level guy and never becomes more than a low-level guy, right? That's kind of like what it is. Like, so you get the view of like, here's what a low-level guy in a mafia looks like. And it looks more realistic than maybe you've ever seen up to that point. Like, oh, okay, well, they're hustling around doing little bullshit or whatever to make their living. Whereas the Ace Rothstein character came up as like just a random guy betting. He got noticed by the mafia. Then they start protecting him and helping him out and helping him get paid or whatever. He rises all the way up to where he's a casino executive, and he's like the casino executive of the year in Las Vegas. Like he kind of shoots the moon, and then the stars get too bright for him, and he falls all the way back down. So it's like a true like American story where you go up to the top. This is like, everyone's always shifting levels in America, and this is like a cutout version of it where you can see, oh, there you go all the way up to the top. Here's all the things that led to the downfall. Boom, they're right back where they started in the beginning.
I think his title was Food and Beverage Director, Beef.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, he even mentions in the movie, in Chicago, they were ran me out of town. Here, they're celebrating me, which I thought was pretty crazy. I think More and more I thought about, I know we discussed it. Like, I think that Casino can actually be a better movie in terms of style and the way the story is told. I know Scorsese has said that this movie is a movie without any plot, but I disagree because it actually shows you the rise and fall of Ace Rothstein and the casino, how the mob had the casino business. I think the reason that Goodfellas is always put as number one is because it became before it. It's something that's, I would say, nostalgia in terms of Goodfellas is one of those first movies that we had The Godfathers. We had Once Upon a Time in America, but off the top of my head, I can't think of another mob movie that went through a first person narration of a rat. And that's what Goodfellas was. And Scorsese shooting it the way he shot it is why it's so memorable in people's minds. I think if this movie came prior, this will be recognized as the better movie, which I think in terms of story and visuals, it is. Also, although I love Lorraine Bracco in The Sopranos, I think Sharon Stone is 10 times smoking than her. So
I totally agree. Like top 10 movie starlet all time for me, Sharon Stone for sure.
Yump's not wrong there. I mean, I think the cool thing is that Joe Pesci is fucking unhinged in both of them. Like just absolutely unhinged in both of them. I think Casino feels bigger than Goodfellas because it takes place in Las Vegas, not, in New York or whatever. It's probably a better movie. The great thing about it is that you don't have to fucking choose. We have both masterpieces to watch whenever we want.
That's right.
What about you, Chorizy? What do you think?
I think I'm a Goodfellas guy. So, and the reason,
my guy,
the reason here is that, and Beef brought it up, and I think it's one of the things that I really like about Casino, but one of the problems that it has is it's so complex, and there's so many things to tie up in the third act that third act's a little bit of a mess compared to Goodfellas, where Goodfellas is a pretty streamlined story because you're really just focusing on Henry Hill. And this one, you're how is the mob getting bounced out of here? What's happening with Ginger? What's going on with Ace? There's Nicky's about to get his face bashed in. Like all these different storylines, they all connect, but like it's tough to take that in, like, even though it's a 3-hour movie, but in that last hour of the movie and go like condense all this shit down and make it just work.
Yeah,
it's difficult. I mean, if they would have made, honestly, if they would have made this a 4-hour movie like The Irishman, it might get there. Like it might actually, to me, be on the same page. But it's tough. I mean, I love both movies.
Yeah.
I just watched this on a plane, which is hilarious because sitting in the middle seat while you're watching this movie of all movies is interesting viewing for your seating partners.
Yeah, how do you explain it to your neighbor that you don't know when Nicky forces Sharon Stone's head to go down on him? Like it's just a little bit of an awkward watching in the middle seat.
You just nudge him and then point at the screen like,
hey, this guy, right?
Look at this.
I was sitting next to Lauren Boebert, so it worked out.
How dare you?
That's hilarious.
Awesome.
Oh my god.
No, but thanks, B, for like bringing that, like mentioning your reasons. And I like you totally said, there's going to be, we have both movies. I just have a preference towards this one now, more thinking about it and going through it. Like Beef, I'm kind of on this one, but like Chorizy, you're with the classic, and I totally get your reasoning behind it too. But they're both perfectly great movies, and they're done differently, which I think shows Scorsese's vision in terms of how he does movies. I just think like they're both perfectly done, and you can like either or. I'm just more on the other side.
So I got one more question. I know we got one more movie to get to, and I want to get you guys in bed for work or whatever tomorrow. But we've talked about two different Scorsese movies tonight. We talked about The Color of Money. We talked about Casino. October 20th, we're getting what people are saying is Scorsese's final movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. Is that what it's called, Yump? Right?
Yeah,
that's what it's called. And they say it's like a 3-hour and 20 movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, massive cast. Have you guys seen previews for it? Or have you read the book? Are you interested in it?
I haven't heard of it at all.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna send you the link to the preview, and I just want to hear what you think, and not on the show or whatever. But I'm as guys that love Scorsese movies, I want to hear what you guys think because it looks fantastic.
Heck
yeah,
sweet.
It's based off indigenous like investigation on indigenous land. Actually, my brother, who works at the University of Oklahoma, one of his good friends there, Sunrise Tecate, He's actually he did lights for the movie with Scorsese. He's indigenous. He did lights with them. He said that like it's really good. He also said Martin's actually a very nice man, which I thought was pretty funny.
That is
but
pretty funny.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I want to see how his twist on things because it's something different. We know Scorsese more for mob movies, like or crime movie, and this is kind of has a crime aspect to it, but it's like totally it's a more cultural thing to it.
It feels like the trailer feels like there will be blood, if that helps at all. That's what the trailer feels like. I digress. I'm sorry. I know we get off topic a little bit here.
No, but let's get into our final movie, gentlemen.
It's just like the saying says, you know, in the poker game of life, women are the rake. They are the fucking rake.
The fuck are you talking about? What's saying?
I don't know. There ought to be one.
1998's Rounders, directed by John Dahl, who also directed Red Rock West, Kill Me Again, and Last Seduction. The movie stars Matt Damon, Edward Norton, John Malkovich, Todd Story, Martin Landau, and Gretchen Mol. It had a budget of $12 million and made a box office of $22 million. So, gentlemen, when we were discussing doing this pod, this is a movie that me and Swole, and I know you guys agreed, automatically put to the side because this is going to be on all of our lists. This movie, I think, is perfectly done on showing the underbelly of the poker world and behind the scenes of how it was making money on the site. Poker was always known from the World Series of Poker. We had it on TV and whatnot, but this is actually like pulling the curtain back and looking about how people grind to make money. And it's something that always, to me, like inspired me. I saw this movie when I was 14 years old. So in 99 after it came out, we rented it from Masterpiece Video. I'll never forget. And I remember watching it and was so intrigued with it that the aspects of like, I know Mike Derman talks about how he tells of people. And I'm like, that's kind of like body language to anything that you do. And he kind of shows how people can give away what they're doing. And then I'm like, well, that's like an aspect that's used in a lot, just in the gambling world, but in real world too, in terms of, you know, if you're a police officer or whatever you're doing, a job interview, stuff like that. Like you bring body language and this guy's making money off it. I love the characters in the movie. I think Edward Norton is fucking phenomenal as Worm. I love the soundtrack. I actually own the soundtrack on CD of the like the movie soundtrack. I think it's great. It's one of my favorite movies, and I think this is a movie that kind of like gave a little bump to the poker world, which Chris Moneymaker made explode when he won the World Series of Poker. But I think this is got the ball rolling, and then it just exploded into what happened after 2003's World Series. What do you think, Beef?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this was the ramp up for it. And then when the explosion happened in tournament poker, which is different than what they're playing in this movie. Like let's bifurcate the two. Tournament poker is a collection of people, they all put their money in, and then there's a prize structure. What they're playing in this movie is cash game poker. So this is people bringing their money to the game. They may have a set buy-in or set limits of bets or whatever, and then they go ahead and play. And everyone plays until, well, you either choose a time that you're not going to play anymore, you got to leave, or until you got no more money. I mean, that's kind of basically the situation there. But I agree with you. It kind of ramped up. And it's funny, the opening scene teaches you one of the biggest gambling mistakes you could possibly make, especially if you're someone who gambles for profit, is not to overbet your bankroll. In no way, shape, or form should you have your entire fucking bankroll on the table at any point in time. Now, there is the idea of like taking shots. So Mike McD in this, he put 30 grand on the table to play in that no limit hold'em match, which was four-handed. Ended up being, I think when he got busted, it was only three-handed or whatever. But you're a guy like that with 30 grand who's normally playing 10, 20, or 20, 40 limit games. You probably should take 5 grand or something, or 10 grand maybe, and take a shot at it. And that's really how it would work in poker and gambling. In this instance, to make it more dramatic, he put his whole bankroll on the table, flushed the shit out of it, and then had nothing left, and that builds the story for you. But like it's like the number one rule, and he says it. You know, he broke the cardinal fucking rule: always leave yourself outs, and he didn't leave himself an out by having his entire bankroll on the table.
Definitely, Chorizy.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ed Norton in this movie. He's incredible. Worm is more like every gambler that you've ever met. Than anyone else in this movie. He's a fantastic piece of this movie, but I think the guy who doesn't get enough credit in this movie is John Turturro, because John Turturro is like the guy who does it for a living. And like they make fun of it to a point where, you're grinding it out on your leather ass. And, he comes back and is like, I'm making a living. I'm paying for my kids. I'm paying for this. I pay rent.
Like, I
do
got
all these
alimony.
things.
I got child support.
Yeah, he
even tells Mike, maybe that's a game you can beat, but you can beat the 10-20 at the Chesterfield and the 20-40 at the Goulash joint. Yeah, they've already got he's helped him pick up all these beats, these places where you can go get a game. It'll be friendly. You can get in there and can actually win some money. And you can beat that game and just sort of like treating it as a profession. Treasy, sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to add on there. Go ahead.
No, it's great. And you could see the difference between like the kind of the older doing it as a career guy and the young guys getting a charge out of going and playing against the guys smoking cigars and then catching them with the wheel, right? I mean, like that's a good interplay of like this guy does this thing and these guys are young and they're excited for this and they're adrenaline junkies. And I like that they show both of those types of gamblers in this, because I think that throughout all these movies that we've talked about, there's that element of like a guy who knows what he's doing and a guy who's doing this for a living, and then people that are just like in it for the thrill of the game.
Definitely. Cool.
So I am going to talk about this movie from a fucking completely different perspective. One, because I don't have the vernacular or the knowledge of gambling that Chorizy and Beef do, but I want to talk about it from how I absolutely love this movie, but it fucking pisses me off for one reason, and that reason is Ed Norton. And I know that Brian put Ed Norton is incredible in everything he's ever been in, one of the finest actors on the planet, and I absolutely fucking 100% agree with that. Ed Norton had a run of The People versus Larry Flint, Rounders, American History X, Fight Club, The Score, an underrated movie called Death to Smoochie, right? Fucking hilarious movie. The 25th Hour, The Italian Job. And now this dude, who is one of the most talented fucking actors on the planet, probably since Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, all he does is make fucking artsy Wes Anderson movies now. And it drives me fucking crazy. It drives me crazy. I love Wes Anderson movies. Like, I think Wes Anderson makes great movies. I went on a date with my wife to see Asteroid City. I like Wes Anderson movies. But this dude is a fucking badass. He was a badass in The 25th Hour. He was fucking insane in American History X. Fight Club is a movie that I have watched a million times. And now he just does fucking artsy Wes Anderson movies, and it drives me fucking crazy. This movie is perfect. Matt Damon is great. Turturro's great. John Malkovich, we haven't even mentioned him once, is fucking absolutely fantastic in this movie.
Yeah.
Martin Landau as the judge is awesome in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes, great call.
But Ed Norton doesn't make fucking movies like this anymore. And I don't want him to make the same movie over and over again, because 25th Hour is different than Fight Club and it's different than American History X. But I don't want to see him in a fucking theater in Asteroid City or playing some fucking French painter in the French Dispatch. It drives me fucking crazy. That's my rant. I'm sorry.
I love it.
I'm sorry.
That's beautiful. It's interesting, the Ed Norton character and Treasy, how much you love him. The Ed Norton character and the Matt Damon character are showing you two different ways to win in the gambling world, right? Edward Norton's character is doing it in a little more slimy, disrespectful way, if you will, underhanded way. But he also understands all these different angles, right? He is aware of the things that are going on around him, and he's not just trying to be the straight up poker player, which Edward Norton is. And in some respects, I assume that, which Matt Damon's character is. And in some ways, I assume the Edward Norton character probably makes a living longer, knowing all of what he knows about every single angle in these games.
That's actually a different, pretty interesting, insight there, Beef. I don't know if he makes it longer, because he's actually, if he would have stopped doing what he was doing, I think they would have came up with the money at the end at the sheriff's game, because he kind of fucked him.
He did.
Even
in that instance, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike tells him, well, how about you? I'll leave and you go play 8 hours straight. He's like, no. But if he didn't come, I think they make their money. Like, of course, for dramatic effect, he fucks them over and he leaves. But like, I just think he's a person that has so many impulses. He can't, he just can't get the better of himself. Like, it's just, he fucks himself over in the end. Because even when he makes the money previously from, set the deck and whatnot at the Chesterfield, he then goes to a mitt joint.
Which, he shits it away playing blackjack or whatever the fuck. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
And he tries to, he's like, oh, I thought I could neutralize it with my skill. And he's like, no, you can't. Like, he's his own worst enemy. But that's the great aspect of his character. He's a degenerate gambler, but he's his friend. So he has to be, he's loyalty towards him. And of course, when he stuck up for him at the, when he was a kid.
I think one of my favorite scenes is Ed Norton barefoot in his like elementary school gymnasium, hiding out from everybody. Like he's that big of a fucking degenerate that he's got to go hang out there. And Matt Damon's character knew exactly where to go look for him at, and it's hilarious.
But to Beef's point though, he's like, this is what we do.
Yeah,
this is how we do it. It like even he goes to prison, and he figures it out in there. Right, like after he gets into prison for a little while, and then he's like, "Oh, I got this whole thing clocked. It's all a game."
He knew he's got to win a certain amount from this group and lose a certain amount to the guards and all this stuff. Yeah, he understood how the bigger game worked from that aspect. And I agree with you, Yump. He getting the best of himself, but he also could be a road show, right? And when they get messed up, he's like, "It's road time, let's go." And you could apply those trades everywhere. But yeah, like. Mike didn't want to do that. Mike McD is like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm going to do this straight up. But a lot of guys would do that. They would hit the road.
When I love the last time they see each other, he goes, "Hey, at least you're rounding again." And it's just like this fucking awesome scene.
You're going to thank me for that, he says.
I think I was ass beat. Yeah. One aspect I did touch on, Beef, was that, in this movie specifically, tells is a big thing, with the Teddy KGB with the cookie in his mouth. And, I eventually got into playing cards, poker. I was a part of backdoor games, in behind, and then eventually go into casinos. And it's not all that. You also have to play numbers as well, as in my opinion. But
for sure,
Gene Siskel, who was actually a huge card player and poker player, loved this movie. But that was the aspect he said was not as believable. Was the fact that it was all of the tells.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, like, that's the biggest bullshit tell of all time, right? As the fucking Oreos, and that's but the reason why they do it so blatantly is to highlight it for you so that you kind of know. They do it a little bit in the Atlantic City casino where they talk about ticks and stuff. And the thing that they don't tell you though is that like tells aren't foolproof. Tells might be pushing you in a direction where you think, okay, this might move the probabilities a little bit because now I think they have a stronger hand or weaker hand, or they may be playing a draw here in this situation. It might move the probabilities enough for you to make a bet or to call or to fold a hand just based on the situation. But you're never going to get a folding top two pair face up because you're never laying down a monster like Mike McD does in that hand there. So yeah, I agree. That part is a little far-fetched, but I'm glad they did it in a way that was so blatant that the audience could understand even if they're not poker players.
And just a couple final things. Like I said, this was Siskel's favorite gambling movie. Howard Stern came out and said that some of the story was based off Norm Macdonald. I don't know how true that is because Howard Stern's fucking out there, so he could just be making shit up. I love the fact that Edward Norton's character was supposed to smoke, and he's like, fuck that. My character's going to hate smoking, which is why he throws out the cigarettes in the beginning of the movie, which I thought was hilarious.
After he wins them from the guys. Yeah, he tosses them. That's right.
And my favorite story from this movie being made is Matt Damon tells it that the day John Malkovich came to the set, everybody was fucking like, oh, Malkovich is here, kissing his ass, right? Malkovich comes down, sits down for his Teddy KGB character, and he's like, if you don't give me the money, and it's like ridiculous accent. And he's like, Matt Damon's like, everybody around him's like, that was fucking great. And he leans over to Matt Damon and he goes, I'm a terrible actor. Which just shows like just how down to earth John Malkovich is. Like everybody knows KGB, his character. I like I said, this movie's just perfectly done in terms of characters and development, and that's why it's like one of my favorites of all time. But with that, gentlemen, thank you. I know we ran long today.
We ran long, yes. Like
that's our fault. It's always our fault. No. Come on, sometimes we always make it long. It's our fault.
I think I can speak for Yump here, and Yump can add his 2 cents in here real quick. I have learned so much tonight from you guys and had such a good blast, like such a blast talking gambling movies feel like Yump and I owe you guys dinner, like just for coming on. That was fucking fantastic. Like I learned so much from you guys. You bring such good like energy to a show. I appreciate you so much, man.
Yeah, just to go off with Swole, so Beef
I'll give you a topless hug later.
Oh God.
I look forward. Me first before Chorizy.
Damn it.
No, but Beef and Chorizy, like you guys, like when we started doing this, you guys were one of the first people to give us feedback. Beef, I constantly go back and forth with you about getting the show better. You as well, Chorizy. What you guys have done for us, we greatly appreciate. You guys are one of our first guests coming on. Beef, you're actually our first big guest we had. And then we went to Richard Roper, and you still overshadowed
a little bit
him.
bigger than me, but it's okay.
But we thank you guys so much for your support and everything throughout the past 2 years we've been doing this. Like, I love Beef, your show. The Jew. I love Chorizy, Southside point of view, and like I try the 108 show. I try to catch on Thursdays. Unfortunately, I have school right now, so I really can't catch it live. But I do catch it on the reruns. But you guys are awesome at what you do. And I love to pick your brain and just try to get better at what we're doing. So greatly appreciate you guys for coming on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. That's wonderful, and we have a lot of fun coming on here. Don't thank us too much. We're enjoying the shit out of coming on here and talking some smack with you guys.
But do you guys want to plug your socials and your shows, please?
Chorizy, you go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously from the108.com is where kind of everything is. You can find us on Twitter or like any social media at from the 108. On YouTube, especially, that's where we do a lot of our live stuff. And if you do like the gambling stuff, we've done a few long form gambling shows with our buddy Sam over at Chicken Dinner. So that's a different podcast, but you can find our episodes there too. I think if this was something that you're like, ooh, I'd like to hear more about that stuff.
More gambling, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for coming on, guys. You guys have a great night.
You too. Thank you,
boys.
Thanks, guys.
Always a fun time having the drunk uncles on, man. Always a fun time.
I did not realize that Beef and Chorizy knew so much shit about gambling. Like I knew they were into gambling, but like they're talking about terminology. They're talking about like different like ways to, not that they do it, but like how different people cheat in gambling. Those guys know their shit. Holy cow.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's another reason why when we were talking about doing this show, so I'm like, they would be perfect for like this type of atmosphere because they're so knowledgeable on everything.
Yeah.
Like in terms of gambling, like I like hearing Beef talk about the games is like a masterclass, and they're like, it's just awesome to have them come on here. Like you saw like how much they know like about the cheats, name of the cheats, the way that running the marks, the just aspects of analytical things in terms of sports gambling. It's just a wealth of knowledge. I could listen to them forever talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just tweeted in that trailer for Killers of the Flower Moon. I want to hear what they think.
Nice. So we still have a little bit of show left, but let's call it audible because the show's a little long and just go over one topic for news and rumors today.
Yeah, I think it's a big one too, man. I think the a tentative deal is in place for the writer's strike to end. I think they're going to vote on it tomorrow, and we will get some of these writers and people back to work.
Which is very good news because this is the first time they both strike, I think, since the 60s.
Yeah.
Both the writers and the actors. And the actors and writers need to get paid what they're worth. These big studios are making too much money off them. And hopefully it's favorable and we can start seeing that, people get paid what they need to get paid to live. And we see good content being made again.
I agree. I think we can, like, we talked a lot about a lot of different movies tonight. I think none of those movies would have been made without great writers in the room reworking these scripts. So I think that's a great cap on news and rumors for the night, don't you, Yum?
Yep, totally. So we're gonna get to our next thing of coming soon. I was gonna play a video from 31 Days of Horror, but I'm gonna skip that because it's 30 seconds and we don't need to go through the 30 seconds of it. But 31 Days of Horror is back. The first video will be released on October 1st, and then each day a new video will be released reviewing a new horror movie that I did not review last year. And this all ties into what's going to come in next month because October is the month of Halloween. Both me and Swole are huge horror movie fans, as we've seen in our previous reviews that we have done. And we're going to give you a show basically of some horror movies that maybe you have not known. They're not so mainstream, but are very good to check out.
Yeah, very, very excited about that. Some underrated stuff. And then, Yump and I are going to go every 2 weeks because I'm doing weekly stuff with Luke on the college football. So Yump and I are going to go every 2 weeks. That gives Yump time to study and do his reset and do his research because he does a lot of fucking research for these shows. But yeah, we're gonna do our underrated horror movies. We got 31 Days of Horror, and then at the end of October, we're going to do our annual deep dive onto a horror movie franchise. And this year, it's going to be Friday the 13th. So I'm very, very excited. Jack, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I really appreciate that kind of break that we have between two shows, the show right now, because on top of doing the research and doing 31 Days of Horror, I do have some in the can, but I have to finish some of them out due to me being sick. I couldn't finish them. It gives me time to reset, and I really appreciate that. So Martial Arts Gems is going to be on a hold. Way Back Playback will be on hold. Once October is done, then we'll get into the full swing of things of having them come back out. So just a heads up there, guys.
Plenty of content from the Sadistic Penguin Studios, though. I'm going to be on tomorrow at 7 with Luke doing the top 25 recap in college football. We got horror movie Drafty Pod coming October 24th with Brian on It's Getting Drafty Pod. We have articles that are coming all the time, coming out all the time from Roxy and Marge guest wrote. And then don't forget, we have the hookup on music with our boy Tony, who is
every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday is putting out fantastic content. And that's kind of my closing thought for the night is just tune into Sadistic Penguin Studios. And we're going to have stuff for you all fucking October.
Yes, and Simpsons Draft on Tuesday. Getting Drafty in here.
Simpsons Draft, Drafty Pod, Tuesday. Who does he have on for that, Yump? Do you know?
It's going to be myself, Jackie, Zombie Jackie, HBIC from the Chicago Sports Bums, Matthew Bana, and Jordan Palmer.
Okay. So my picture for the final thought is me and my Florida Panthers hockey jersey. You think we could get Brian to do a hockey jersey draft?
Yeah. You guys are the draft kings of the jerseys. I'm not a big fan of jersey stuff, but yeah, I mean, that'd be a good one too.
I'm a massive hockey jersey fan. Talking about gambling, I'm going to wrap this up here in 2 minutes, but PointsBet had PointsBet had a promo where if you deposited $50, they give you a free $150 coupon to get a jersey on Fanatics. So I got like fucking 10 jerseys.
Nice.
I created an account. My mom created an account. Everyone created an account for me, and I got like 10 hockey jerseys.
Nice.
But just tune in to Sadistic Penguin Studios. We're having a blast. We're always putting out content. And if you're buying an iPhone at the Oak Brook Apple Store, back up your shit and know your Apple ID password. Other than that, I'm out.
Thank you for listening to Yumper and Svo, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.